Okay, we're going to start this meeting. So if we can have quiet, please, so people can hear what is being said. Okay, thank you. It's after 10 o'clock on Tuesday, March 6th, 2012, which is the date and time warned for our Putney Town meeting and our school district meeting. So I am calling this meeting to order, and I'm going to bang my gavel. It looks good on the TV. Got it. Okay, my name is Virginia Scholl, and I am your town moderator that you elected last year. You get elected, and then you have a year to think about what you got yourself into before you actually have to do it. But this is my first time of moderating a real town meeting, so I'll do my best. I did have some training. The state, the League of Cities and Towns gives a wonderful moderator training. If any of you are considering doing this job sometime, you get a good training up in Montpelier, where they gather all the moderators from all the towns. Really interesting experience to see the variation of the way towns run town meetings. We all have variations on a theme. Some towns do all their business by Australian ballot. Some towns elect their officers by hand vote the day of the town meeting. We have a nice balance in Putney, I think. I like the way we do it here. I just wanted a note on the changing time. When I was standing in the line at the ladies' room in this town training meeting, the moderator from Townsend commented that this was the first time she had ever had to wait in line for the ladies' room at town moderator training. A sign of changing times. Okay. So I have my Robert Rules of Order here. It's about 700 pages long, and I haven't quite read it all. But I can't resist. I have to read you this little description of who Roberts was, who controls all our meeting agendas, except for actually the legislature doesn't use Robert. I just found that out. This is a little piece of history that I'm just going to share with you today. The General Henry Robert, who gave his name to this book, was, in quote, a sparely built but gregarious and determined U.S. Army engineer officer who published this book in February 1876. So these rules have been around for a long time. We actually can change them if we don't like them, if we agree to that by 2/3 vote. And Johnny Caldwell used to say, he said, if he gets mixed up on Robert's rules, we use Johnny's rules. So I'm not sure what Johnny's rules were, but I'll do the best to follow Robert's rules. A few just reminders of how it all works. Is that remarks should be addressed to the moderator, except when we're in open discussion about, say, the town budget, and then it will kind of go back and forth to our select board who are first, and later we'll have the school portion of the meeting. So please raise your hand, wait to be recognized, and wait for the microphone and speak identify yourself loudly and clearly so that Anita can get your name into the town record. If you saw the Westminster Town Record, town meeting report, you'd see their report is very spare, no names in it. Putney her notes are wonderful. They're full of the names and the comments that people make. So if we want to keep this interesting town meeting report, we need to help Anita by making clear who we are when we speak. Also gets me off the hook to remember your name. Okay, so wait for the mic, state your name, speak loudly. People will have 2 opportunities to speak. This is the rule, 2 opportunities to speak. But you won't be called a second time until everyone who wants to speak the first time has been heard. And there is a 10-minute limit, so no filibustering allowed. So, let's see. An action is only binding on articles that were warned. So other business that comes at the end of the meeting is Yeah, is that okay, Mike? It's off now. What?
That came out of nowhere.
Okay, I think the microphone isn't on now, is it? It is? Oh, it's on. Okay. Yeah, so other business is non-binding. Speak louder. Okay. So I will read an article, it gets moved and seconded, and then open for discussion. You can amend an article. You can make a second, you can amend the amendment, and that's as far as it goes. After that, it's too confusing. So only primary and secondary amendment. And you can also make something called a friendly amendment. That's just like asking someone if they want to vary the wording slightly of their amendment. So hopefully it won't get too complicated. If you think that my decision, that my ruling is wrong, you can question the moderator by calling point of order. If you want to have more information, you can call point of information, or just say, please, just raise your hand and ask something to be clarified. We don't really have to use all this 130-year-old language. We don't want it. Call to question is when you feel the discussion has gone on long enough, and it requires a 2/3 vote of the House to carry. If the votes are unclear by voice vote, we'll call for another division of the House, which means that you have to raise your hand to vote, and so we can count the vote. And I want to also say that we operate not only under Robert's rules, but also Vermont law, Vermont state law. And there has been a change in Vermont state law, which changes a bit the way we've been operating in Putney. Changed several years ago, which allows discussion of Australian ballot articles. I'm just going to read you the little, it's really a change for us. I'm going to read you a little quote from the Vermont state articles, or whatever they are. Public discussion of ballot issues and all other issues appearing in the warning, other than election of candidates, shall be permitted on that day at the annual meeting, regardless of the location of the polling place. So even though we're voting here and discussing it as we vote, that's still okay. We can discuss Australian ballot articles, which really only pertains to Article 3, which is the article about the $900,000 bond, school bond issue. And this is good news for Benji Cragen because he's prepared to give us some explanation and accept questions about that issue. So when we get to that, that's what will happen. Okay, let's see. Just want to say that my job here is to make the meeting run as smoothly as possible, fairly, to make it welcoming for you all to speak if you feel so moved. This is our chance to have our voices heard in a really basic participatory democracy forum, gathering of the community. It's a really unique event in public governance these days, and I hope that you will take advantage of it. I'm glad you're here because if you don't come to town meeting as an institution will cease to exist at some point. So it's good that you're here keeping it alive. I would like to invite Chris Ryan, if there's no objection, who is our town manager, to join the select board who are up here on the stage. But before we get into the business of the meeting, I think we have town representative. Oh, Chris Ryan. Yeah, just Oh, I just wanted to say one more thing, that listening to other town managers, they had talked about town bullies, they talked about dissent and all sorts of things. I'm really counting on this meeting to be respectful and civil as it has always been in the past. Okay, so I think if there's no objection, I'd like to invite Mike Nowicki, David Dean, Jeanette White to speak to us about the legislative.
We should wait to hear if there's an objection.
Is there any objection? Okay.
2018, and I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. And I would like to thank you for the honor of representing this district in the Vermont legislature. I serve as chair of the Fish, Wildlife, and Water Resources Committee, and I am an at-large member of the House Rules Committee. Quickly on some legislative issues. First off, reapportionment. For me, I was pleased that this district of Westminster, Putney, and Dummerston, which has been together since the Supreme Court Baker decision requiring one vote, one person back in the 60s. And every 10 years we go through reapportionment based on census and whatever. This district remains within bounds of a continuing two-member district. So whether it's Mike and I or whomever, it will be the three towns voting together two representatives. In the Fish and Wildlife Committee, we passed out of the House and is now in the Senate a bill that creates a moratorium on what's called hydrofracturing. It is a method for exploring for gas and oil at very deep levels. And the risk is what they put down there to fracture the rock to release the gas and oil. The chemicals, it's a soup, and there are over 600 chemicals that are used in that process. Not all in the same hole, but there are over 600. So we've said no. We're not going to do it in Vermont until we have the science right and understand. Cool. I love this district. The other major piece of work that we're doing with the Water Resources Committee is we are considering legislation for lakes and rivers. And in response to weather year 2011, we all know here in the Connecticut River Valley that Tropical Storm Irene created untold damage, just incredible damage. But earlier in the year, we had Lake Champlain that crested this past spring 1.5 feet above the historic high water mark for the lake. In addition, we had spot storms that created enough erosion up in the Passumpsic River watershed, which is up north in the Connecticut River watershed, that turned the main stem of the Connecticut River silty from St. Johnsbury to Long Island Sound. So there was a lot of damage done in a smaller area this spring. So we are working on trying to make Vermont flood resilient, and at the same time provide environmental protections for the rivers and lakes here in the state. I mentioned I was on the Rules Committee, and so far this year the Rules Committee has been quiet, but in the legislative process there is a date by which all bills have to pass out of the House and go to the Senate, and out of the Senate and go to the House. If bills miss that date, they are referred to the Rules Committee. And 7 of us sit around and decide which of them will go into the full House process and which of them we just don't have time or the will to deal with. So I expect things to heat up on the Rules Committee. Crossover is the Friday after we get back from the town meeting break. Otherwise, please stay in touch. I want to thank Michael for producing, writing, and copying and distributing our newsletter, which has all of our contact information on it. And there are also some Doyle poles back there, I believe, where the telephone is located. So with that, thank you.
We'll have questions at the end for any of them.
Good morning. What a delight to be here. I enjoy working in Montpelier, but there's no place like home. I'm Mike Mowicki, for those of you who don't know me, and I have the honor to be serving in the House of Representatives, and I appreciate that honor. And I appreciate the chance to come back home to a village that is now whole. And I know Lisa Papazian is going to hear it a lot today, but I think we could shout out right now again for all the work she did to get the general store back online. I know there were a lot of people here, just about everybody here contributed, and I don't know if Steve Ingram is here, Ingram Construction, but they did a great job. People from out of town, like the Shumlins, Jeff Shumlin was essential in this. The list goes on, but I think, like with Storm Irene, the general store storm has brought people together in a way that makes Vermont what it is. I'm so proud and glad to be here, part of this wonderful town. It's also wonderful to work with these good people. I get to work with the Dean of the House. David Dean is not just the Dean in name only, but he is the person we look to with the experience and to know how things are going on the floor of the House. And I appreciate his generosity to me. It's been a pleasure to work with another guy from Putney this year. Governor Shumlin has just done a great job under extraordinary circumstances, historically extraordinary circumstances. Between the floods up north, the floods across the state, the spring floods, the summer floods, this almost snowless winter that has really hurt our economy, Peter has done an amazing job. It's been wonderful to work with him. Peter shared recently that he was at a meeting with former Governor Douglas, and he asked Governor Douglas, so in your 8 years, how many natural disasters did you have to deal with? Governor Douglas said, well, none, 0. So Peter said, where do you go to church? Because I think I should start going. Peter certainly proved he is the right person at the right time. And I know I am looking forward to seeing what he does in his second term to build on his first. Back in the legislature, we have 25 committees that are working hard for you. I work on the House Human Services Committee during the session, and we have been working a lot on mental health services, especially since in the summer flood, the facility we have in Waterbury was destroyed, so we've had to design a new plan. We've taken that opportunity to get away from an old model of treatment, which is based on institutionalizing people, to a more, I think, enlightened recovery mode, what they say. And if you'd like more details about that, please feel free to contact me. And you can also look on my website, wyndham5.net, or the legislative website. In addition to that, I've been also appointed to the Health Oversight Committee. And that's a committee that meets outside the legislative time once a month to make sure that the delivery of health care is happening as it should. And included in that is oversight over health reform and the Green Mountain Care Board. So this is an important time for health care. Vermont is really leading the way in the nation to what can happen in terms of universal coverage and as we move towards single-payer coverage. So I'm glad to be part of that. And if you have questions or suggestions, because this is an ongoing process, and we want to hear from you. I know that Vermonters, and Putney especially, are an educated and enlightened electorate, so I appreciate all the help we can get. Some other headlines that you may have noticed, there have been a number of lawsuits, and there's a certain corporation from Louisiana that has been on either end of a number of lawsuits. Now, I just want to mention briefly, I think the most prominent lawsuit was recently the lawsuit where Louisiana Mtg sued all of us. And they sued all of us so they could keep operating beyond the 40-year license of their nuclear power plant. The federal judge, Judge Murtha, agreed with what they had to say at this point in time. And I don't agree with that, and I just want to state my opinion here. Corporations already have enough power in this country, and I hope we'll be talking about this at a later date or later today. I believe Judge Murtha's decision gives this corporation and others even more power, and it takes away power from individuals, it takes away power from states to make our own plan for how we want to move forward. Governor Shumlin has put forward, he's the first governor to put forward an energy plan. We have a plan for sustainable energy using 21st century technology. We want to use 21st century energy sources. Coal, nuclear, fossil fuels are the fuels of the 20th century. And we want to move forward and live in this century and move forward with that. This judge's decision takes some of that power away from us. And I think similar to the People's United decision by the Supreme Court, this gives corporations even more power, and I feel we need to stand up against that. And I'm bringing my voice. And on your behalf, I want to join with the other Vermonters who are bringing our voices to Montpelier and to Washington, D.C. to say that we don't believe that corporations are people. We don't believe money means free speech. We believe individuals are people, and we, the individuals, we the people, should have the ultimate power over how our lives go. I'd like to make some time now for Senator White here, and want to thank her as well for how generous she's been with her time and wisdom as she enters her 10th year in the Vermont Senate representing all of us. Senator White.
Thanks. I too want to say that it is a real pleasure and an honor to be in the Vermont Senate serving Windham County. I just wanted to make a comment. Virginia asked you to identify yourself so that it could be in the town report. And I have to say, I just want to compliment the town for the town report that comes out year after year after year. It's thorough, it's complete, it gives all the reports, it's easy to read, easy to understand, and I think we should be proud of the town report that we generate from here. Thank you. So I serve on in the Senate we serve on two committees, an afternoon committee and a morning committee. So my morning committee is the Judiciary Committee, and in the afternoon I chair the Government Operations Committee. And this year I'm also chairing a third committee, which is not a regular standing committee, but it's the Senate Redistricting Committee. Every 10 years we have to redistrict the state because the population shifts, and our Constitution says one person, one vote, unlike some states' constitutions. So we have to have equal representation as much as possible, while paying attention to the existing political subdivisions, towns, counties. So it's an almost impossible task to redistrict. The House has finished theirs and sent it to us, and we're working on ours. I don't think Putney will move out of Windham County. It's a little too far from any border, so you can rest assured you'll be in Windham County. In the Judiciary Committee, we're looking at there are a lot of issues that we're looking at, but one of the big things is how many people we put in prison. Vermont has I believe it's the absolute highest number of people under the jurisdiction of corrections of any state. We also are very high in the number of people per population who are actually incarcerated. And a lot of that there are a lot of people in prison who don't belong there. They aren't violent, they pose no threat. Many of them are there because of technical issues. They start with what might be a simple crime, then they violate parole, and it keeps going down and down and down. So we're trying to figure out how to get those people who are in prison and shouldn't be there out of prison. We've heard that on any given day there are probably 200 people incarcerated who don't need to be, and at a cost of $55,000 for a male per year and $75,000 for a female per year. It's a lot of money that we're spending when we could be providing community services and other services that would actually help people. The other issue that we're dealing with is a related issue, and this isn't people who are in prison, but every day in the paper there's somebody was stopped and arrested for their third driving with suspended license, fourth driving with suspended license. Most of those started with failure to pay a fine or failure to have insurance. They're not criminal charges, but by the time they get to the fifth and sixth one, they're so mired in debt that they can't get out, and it becomes a criminal charge. So we're trying to figure out a way of getting people back on the roads legitimately so they can go to work. They don't have to live in fear of being stopped yet once again. So that's taking a lot of time, but I think we've got the bill fine now, and if anybody is interested in the details on that, I'll provide it to you. In government operations, we deal with all issues of, it's my favorite committee of all, we deal with issues of democracy. And I love it. We deal with elections, municipal issues, public records, open meetings. Those are two of the big things we're dealing with this year, is public records and open meetings and what constitutes them. And as school boards and select boards know, sometimes it can be a little bit tricky when you're open and when you're not, when you can go into executive session. So we're trying to clean up those statutes. We're also dealing with vital records. You may not know it, but in Vermont, anybody can get anybody else's birth certificate, a certified copy. If I wanted to have one of your birth certificates because I decided I didn't like who I was anymore and I wanted to start a new me, I could call and get your birth certificate, and Anita has no ability to tell me I can't have it. And it comes on certified paper, and it's an issue because we are finding that the FBI and Homeland Security are dealing with a number of individuals who started their identity with Vermont birth certificates. And it's quite a serious issue. The security paper that you get your birth certificate on sells in the black market, not in Vermont because you don't need it to buy it in Vermont, you can just call town clerk and get it. But on the black market it sells for $10,000 a page, and we give it away. So we're trying to deal with that. The other problem with this is that that some states, now I know Colorado does this, if you move to Colorado and your 16-year-old now wants to go get a driver's license and he was born in Vermont, they will not accept the Vermont birth certificate because they can't be guaranteed that it's valid. So we're trying to deal with that. Most people don't know that that's a huge issue. We're also looking at JRS 11, which is the corporate personhood Citizens United issue. Mike talked about mental health. The issue that my committee has around the mental health is about the employees, because our committee also deals with state employees. And we have 195 people who were working at the state hospital when it was washed away. And so we are trying to figure out how we're going to deal with those employees to try to make them as whole as possible. I'm going to wade into probably some hot water here and tell you that I took a vote on Thursday and Friday that some of you may not agree with, but I will try to tell you why I did it. It was on the immunization bill. In Vermont, children are required to have immunizations before they can enter public school or a licensed daycare. There are 3 exemptions. There's the medical exemption, there's a religious exemption, and starting in 1979, there was a personal philosophical exemption. What we are finding is that the number of immunizations in Vermont is dropping, and we're down to about 90% in many of those immunizations. And what we hear and what has been shown is that starting at about 95 or 96%, if you're below that level of immunization, you're running a real risk of bringing back those diseases that we thought had been pretty much eradicated. Polio, whooping cough, measles, chicken pox, mumps, and they're coming back to Vermont, and it is a real issue. So this is a balancing act. individual people's rights versus the collective right of the society. And I chose on the right of the society. Many people don't feel that way, but I felt that it was a very important decision to make, and I feel I can justify that decision. So, thank you. I am going to say that the Putney was pretty spared in the flood. I don't know how many of you traveled around the state to see the devastation, but it is awful, and it still is awful. There are still, I don't know how many, I think it's about 300 Vermonters who still do not have homes to go to. There are people that even if we can do something to help them, they won't be made whole because there isn't enough money. FEMA doesn't have enough money. The state has made a lot of effort toward making towns whole, and here's what I'm going to have you do. How many of you have this license plate already? Oh, Eva! Yes, thank you! This license plate, what is given, it's being produced by the state. It costs $5 to produce the license plate. It costs you $25 to buy it. $18 of that goes to the Vermont flood victims, and $2 goes to the Vermont food shelf. So that's $20 that you can write off your taxes if you want to, because the thing itself is only worth $5. And my goal is to see every single car in Putney and Windham County have one of these things on them. You can put them on the front of your car legally until June 2014. You can put it on your bathroom mirror and look at it every morning if you want. You can send it to your kids out of state because it's a great fundraiser. So, if you can go to the DMV and pick one up for $25, or you can order one from Vermont Life. I'll put the things back there, but you got to pay $8 shipping and handling, or you can sign up with Eva. Give her $25, and I'll pick them up at DMV and bring them back to Putney. So, do that. And I want to tell you, when I did this in Westminster on Saturday morning, a whole bunch of people signed up, so I want Putney to beat them, okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for our representatives here? Eva.
Eva London. I so appreciate you all coming, and I have a question. Maybe you don't know the answer, but I've often wondered from last year and this year where our other senator is, and if he would ever consider coming to the Putney Town meeting. So I wonder if you might not know. I know last year he was out of the country skiing, I think, but I wondered if you could help us.
I'm not sure where he is. He may be at another town meeting or he may be elsewhere. And I was complaining this morning that with all the town meetings we have to go to, that it's hard to get to all of them. Tom Ehrenberg suggested that I might take lessons from Santa Claus, because he can do it all in one evening.
Yes, Steve.
Steve Anderson. Could you clarify your vote? Steve Anderson. Could you clarify your vote on the exemption? Did you vote against all three of them or against one or other?
No, the only issue was whether or not we should eliminate the personal philosophical exemption. The medical exemption remains, because there are some children who legitimately can't get vaccinations, and the religious exemption still remains.
Yes.
My name is Kate Dodge, and in full disclosure, I'm one of the owners of Putney Town Winery. And this is a question, I think, primarily for Jeanette. Is that better? I was wondering, last year there was a bill that I believe would eliminate the DLC liquor department's distribution of alcohol and make that a private company business, Mother B's, and eliminate the Department of Liquor Control altogether. And I wondered if that was there again, and I wanted to support.
Actually, it was not, it didn't actually even become a real bill, but there is thought to it that do we really need DLC? Should the enforcement be done by state police and Department of Health, just like other enforcement is done, and education can be done by other? There's a lot of questions, and what happens is when we do liquor laws, we kind of seem to do them piecemeal. I have one bill in this year that I think will be passed that is going to affect next stage, I believe, because it would allow a caterer to serve wine and beer at an event, a catered event, without having to have a liquor license, which is just the most ridiculous. I mean, they'd have to have their beer and wine license, but they don't have to have a hard liquor license. That's the way the law is now. But at some point, we should look at the whole DLC question. I agree.
Tom Howe. I am among some others here who may not have broadband access, and I want to thank Mike Mawicki for his efforts in putting forward this Connect Vermont. And if anybody has, I guess it's broadbandvt.org, and there's a note in the town meeting report that was prepared by David and Mike, indicating that if we are in touch with people with the organization Connect VT, that we could move forward with broadband access for everybody. Thank you, Mike.
I have a question for you. This process is ongoing because Governor Shumlin has, because of his own experience not having service up on Dusty Ridge or at his business, knows that Vermonters need this to be connected to other parts of the country and the world, personally and for business. He's put together a team that is putting together a plan, and what we found out was there were some holes in the information they had. So I met with Karen Marshall 2 weeks ago, who was the head of this effort, and let her know that they had some incorrect information about Putney. What she has said is she's willing to come to Putney and meet with people to find out more information firsthand, but also to let you know what the plans are. If that's something people are interested in, please let me know, because we could set up, she would have come today, but I said you had enough to do. But if that's something that, maybe a show of hands, how many people would like that? I'd be glad to have her down here. That's probably representative of what I shared with her. So I'll set that up. We'll probably do it here at the school. I'll talk to the principal and make public notice so people can be aware of that. And there are some good things happening, and I think we're getting closer, and I'm sorry that you still don't have that access now. Reno? Yeah.
I think our representatives will be able to stay for a little while in the back if you have questions that you've occurred to you that you would like to address to them personally.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we will begin. Okay. I think we're ready to begin the business portion of the meeting, which starts with articles to be voted by Australian ballot, and I believe I have to read these to you. This is on page 58 in your town report if you want to follow along.
Virginia?
Oh, yes.
Sorry, we have one other thing that needs to be done first, I believe.
Let me just take care of some business before. Yes.
Actually, first of all, I would like to ask the select board to introduce themselves so that you know who they are.
My name is Scott Henry, currently the chair of the select board.
Brad King, vice chair. Josh Laughlin, secretary, and will be chair after today's meeting.
So, Scott, you want to speak to something?
Sure. Most of the first item of business that we want to attend to it's with a great deal of regret that we have accepted the resignation as of June 30th this year of Chris Ryan as our town manager, who's done a wonderful job the last 6 years. I think Chris deserves a big hand from everyone.
Can I just say, it's been a great time here, and I really thank you very, very much. It's just a unique place, and as I said in my little piece at the top, was absolutely the highlight of my career in public service, so thank you.
And we're very fortunate in to have a chance to introduce our new selection for town manager, that Cynthia Stoddard, who's been working in the Putney office for the last, how long since she did? 5 years now. Right? Will be taking over the job as of July 1st. And Cynthia, stand up and let everybody have a look. So, you can go and introduce yourself. Thanks.
Okay, so we're ready now for Article 1?
Nope.
No, oh, sorry, okay.
As we were, you may know, we're very fortunate to we're going to be closing on the so-called Wilson wetland area, and that has gone through. Through the generosity and kindness of the Wilson family, this is who I think really bent over backwards to accommodate us, and they deserve a great deal of thanks. And Pamela, are you out there? We want to speak to this ever so briefly. Just leave you a microphone. Okay.
Hi, I'm Pamela Cubbage, Chair of the Conservation Commission. Oops, can you hear me now? Hi everyone, I'm Pamela Cubbage. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chair of the Conservation Commission, and I have a little statement I'm going to read. So, Scott just said that the purchase and sale agreement for the Wilson wetland was signed last week, and we want to let everyone know that no tax dollars are being spent on the purchase of the wetland, and the Conservation Commission would like to take this time to thank everyone who made this possible. So first of all, the water commissioners, also known as the select board when they put on their other hats, appropriated $5,000 for the project from the Water Enterprise Fund, because the land is in the town well source protection area. So we're really grateful for that. The balance of the funds were donated by 60 individuals, the Putney Mountain Association, the Earthbridge Land Trust, the Southeastern Vermont Audubon Society, Landmark College, IGG Software, and DOS Solutions. We'd really like to thank Pauline Wilson, who agreed to sell her property at well below its appraised value of $40,000. And we intend to formally name this land the Wilson Wetland in honor of the Wilson family, which has long been associated with that area. Once it's purchased, the land, the town will conserve it undeveloped in order to protect the town's well water, like I said a minute ago. Provide an area which will store Sacketts Brook floodwaters, thus continuing to protect us from flood damage. I think one of the reasons why we didn't experience a lot of flood damage was we have that undeveloped wetland that held the water that we got in our rain. And this land will also provide habitat for many birds and animals which use the area, and the humans who like to go and see them there. And that includes 12 species of greatest conservation need. So again, thanks to all of you who have donated to this project, many of you. Thanks to Pauline Wilson, and I'd like to especially thank Ann Carey and Jackie Walker of the Conservation Commission who have done the work with me.
One more thing before we get to the articles is we have the pleasure of picking and announcing the Person of the Year. It used to be done at the town party, in the absence of that in the last couple of years. We do it here at town meeting. And without the slightest bit of irony, we're happy to offer this year, not to an individual, but a couple. And that is John and Esther Caldwell. We've got a statement here from Mr. Laughlin, who voice you'll recognize.
Yes, I actually heard through the rumor mill in the process of trying to get Johnny and Pat here that Johnny had intended to go skiing today. So we're going to try and keep this brief because I know he's got more important things to do. But I spoke briefly yesterday with the governor's office. I couldn't reach him directly because he wasn't available. But he wanted to say just a brief statement, and so I'm going to read the statement from Peter. It's hard to imagine life in Putney without thinking about John and Pat. Their combined influence touches all corners of the lives of us Putney kids. Memories of cross-country skiing, running, roller skiing, hiking, and cutting trails come to mind. Or else gardening, singing, Christmas caroling, taking Thanksgiving walks, and celebrating with impromptu picnics for all. Each of us has learned at the hands of John and Pat. They are true masters of community. I want to thank the Putney Select Board for taking time during town meeting to honor and celebrate these remarkable individuals. I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but I'm proud to lend my support to two people so deserving to be recognized as People of the Year. You can't love Putney without loving Pat and John, and we are all incredibly lucky to know them.
It's all yours, Virginia.
Okay, so thank you, Scott. Okay, now we will begin going through the articles. And if you do not have a town report, there are extra town reports in a box right over here by the door. This is on page 58 in the back. The first three articles are being voted by Australian ballot, so that means I'll simply read them, and there could be discussion of number 3, but not the first two because they are about officers. And these articles cannot be amended because they're already written out and you're voting on them. So Article 1, to choose all town officers required by law to be elected at the annual town meeting, voting by Australian ballot. Article 2, to choose all town school district officers required by law to be elected at the annual school district meeting, voting by Australian ballot. Article 3, you will notice this is an extremely long article, which actually says the same thing twice, but I think I am required to read the whole thing, so just bear with me. And then Benji Craven will be available to elucidate it further. Okay, Article 3, the Board of School Directors of the Putney Town School District proposes to incur bonded indebtedness for Phase 3 of the Energy Conservation Project, which consists of installation of a pellet boiler and backup oil-fired boiler with new controls, consolidation of 3 separate boiler rooms by the removal and repiping of 2 boiler rooms, and the renovation expansion of 1 boiler room. You have that. Additional work includes reconfiguration of the boiler room, kitchen, and associated spaces, a new airlock vestibule, blown-in insulation, replacement of siding, upgrading of wiring and alarm system as required in areas of renovation, and other work at the elementary school. The estimated total project cost of $900,000. It is estimated that 100% of the project will not be eligible for state school construction aid. Therefore, the 100% of the project that is estimated to be ineligible under the formula shall be built at 100% school district cost. The cost of the portion of construction for which state construction aid is unavailable is $900,000. The vote on the foregoing article will be by Australian ballot as required by law. So here we go. The question to be voted upon will be as follows. Shall general obligation bonds or notes of the Putney Town School District in an amount not to exceed $840,000 be issued for the purpose of financing the cost of making certain public improvements, viz. Phase 3 of the Energy Conservation Improvement Project, which consists of installation of a pellet boiler and backup oil-fired boiler with new controls, consolidation of 3 separate boiler rooms by the removal and repiping of 2 boiler rooms, and the renovation and expansion of 1 boiler room. Additional work includes reconfiguration of the boiler room, kitchen, and associated spaces, a new airlock, vestibule, blown-in insulation, replacement of siding, upgrading, wiring, alarm system is required in areas of renovation, and other work at the elementary school. The estimated cost of such improvements being $900,000, to be paid in part through the application of $60,000 of the district's capital improvement fund. So I think Benji is ready to explain further and take any questions you might have about this.
Hello, I'm Benji Cragham. I'm the chairman of the Putney Central School Board, and I just wanted to give a brief sort of how we got here, because I haven't been able to speak to these bond votes before, and now that I can. So we have a 3-phase project here. Phase 1 and Phase 2 are complete. Phase 1, we started with the gym. We took a block wall with no insulation, we insulated it, new heat delivery and ventilation system, and a new vestibule out front here with new controls. Phase 2 was the long hall, which is the building that runs parallel to Westminster West. That had a whole new envelope. We were looking at single pane windows, hardly any insulation. So now we have greatly increased the insulation, new windows, and new heating and ventilation units, as well as new controls. We also, in the quad, when you go through the glass hall on the left, we added some more insulation to that. So now the last and final phase. There's no Phase 4. We're not going to keep coming and hitting you up for more money. This is it. We need, the bulk of this is, we need a new heating system. We frankly have needed a new heating system for a while, but we haven't just done it. We've got a 40-year-old boiler right now that is heating this gym and the bulk of the building, with then another boiler in the quad, which is a 30-year-old boiler that is heating that. We have one other boiler in the newer room, the newer wing there, which isn't quite as old. But we are going to replace all 3 of those with a pellet boiler. We're going to have a backup oil boiler system. Basically, in case anything goes wrong, there's also a need for the oil in the marginal times in spring and fall. Pellet boiler needs a certain load to kick on. So for a little bit, we'll use oil, but we will 95% will be the wood that can come from Vermont or maybe New Hampshire. We also are in the quad there. One nice thing about doing this in phases is you sort of tear into one spot and we go, oh my goodness, we didn't realize that had no insulation there either. So we're going to continue finishing the quad. If you look on the parking lot outside, if you're looking at the quad there, we're going to finish up those 3 sides as well. So when that's done, we will have upgraded our building into a modern, efficient, insulated building. We also have the pellet boiler that's going to go into the boiler room. It's going to require more room, so we're taking the kitchen pantry away, so we need to do some reconfiguration of the kitchen and demo work. One benefit to this is we're going to be able to put in an efficient walk-in cooler to replace the inadequate refrigeration that we have right now. That if you look in the kitchen, you'll see that those two refrigerators take up all this space in there. So it's very difficult. If anyone's ever worked in that kitchen, there's, you know, as much workspace as a small apartment, and you're trying to feed 180 kids. So you're voting on $840,000. That's what we're going to need for the bond vote. $60,000 of it is going to come from the capital fund. This is money that we've been putting away year after year for just this, when we need a capital improvement. So the bond will be for the $840,000. The reason why the language that the state will not give us anything, about 5 or 6 years ago, the state used to do about 50% of projects like this. About 5 or 6 years ago, the state just stopped. Said, if the school district's going to do something, you're going to pay for it. So that's why the language is like that. Everyone on your chair, you have a green pamphlet that has a lot of this information and questions that you might have. Craig said was very helpful in putting this together, and I think it's a fantastic piece of information. So please read through that. And I think at this point, if there's any questions.
Eva. You know, Eva Munden, I sit in this room and I see that it's warmer, and I mentioned that in the last town meeting. And I'm wondering if you could tell me the improvements that were put in the last round, if they're actually functioning full-time.
They are functioning full-time. We have had, at full disclosure, we have had a problem with this room right here. And I think actually we had people here on yesterday. And I think what we're finding is power surges are resetting. You know, these are now digital controls, which are much more efficient, but a little more finicky. And this is all warranty work. This is all, we're not paying extra money on this. You know, this is part of the sort of figuring it out. It's also, at this point, we're dealing with marrying some old systems to new systems. At the end of phase 3, we will have, throughout the entire building, a new system of controls where we won't have some old vacuum systems that we're trying to tie in to move it along. We're going to get to the bottom of this. I think we're almost there, and we'll get it done.
Okay.
But I would like to point out that before this, there was no ventilation in this gym because the ventilators froze the heaters. And as soon as it was installed, they ordered it up, and no ventilation was ever used in this building.
Okay, 3 parts to the question. Part 2 is, if it's digital and we have a pellet system, will that affect the pellet system? And would that cause any problems for heating?
The pellet system will work, is designed for the digital controls. I mean, you don't have to have digital controls, but these are more efficient control system. So we want those digital controls. And that's not a problem for the pellet boiler.
And part 3 would be, was there any investigation into the possibility of solar for, since this is the so-called solar age and there is money out there, for solar to be used in the heating or improvements in the school system?
We looked at, so everything was on the table when we looked at what we're going to do for heating. We looked at geothermal, we looked at wood chip, we looked at wood pellet, we looked at just going with oil again. John Penny, our mechanical engineer, was very helpful, obviously, in this. And I'd like to also point out we had Craig Stead and Scott Henry, Pip Bannister, Tony Coven, and Daniel Hovis on an energy committee that has been helping me formulate this. And it came down to geothermal didn't work because to get the benefits of geothermal, you really need a cooling element to it. And we don't have a cooling element, so it was way too expensive for it. Wood chip, the building with all of our insulation improvements and the size of the building, it really didn't work for wood chip. Plus with the wood chip, there's a maintenance component that there's just more things that can go wrong. So we would like the ease that the pellet boiler gave it. And solar, the problem with solar for heating a building is that when you need that solar the most in January is when the sun's out the least. And so we need a whole new backup system also to do the solar. Solar's not there. Maybe at some point it will be. I'm not saying that it can't be done to a certain extent, but it wasn't economically feasible. And here we're thinking, here's a local resource. Here is the carbon that we're burning here has been sequestered during our lifetime, not, millions of years ago that we're bringing a different environment sort of back to this environment. So that's the big reason for going with pellet. And quite frankly, the cost. The other piece that everyone needs to know is we need to replace our heating system. We got to do it. So we're going to spend money on it. We're spending money on it right now with breakdowns and inefficiency. And oil, the price of oil is fluctuating now so rapidly. We used a 5% increase. If you look on your green sheet, we used a 5% increase per year to project costs. But if you look at the past couple of years, we're looking at 30% increase. And for a school, for any business, if your costs are rapidly fluctuating, it's very hard to budget. Where this way, pellets have been a very steady price. So whether we do the pellet boiler or we do something else, we're going to spend money on here. We figured out that this is the most efficient and cost-effective way to do it here. We are going to save a lot of money on this. On the course of this 20-year bond, we will pay for this whole project. And, depending on what oil would do, probably and then some savings.
Greg McAllister. I'm assuming, maybe I'll say that there's a blower involved in this, and in the case of a power outage, what's the backup for that?
We have a backup generator at the school right now. I don't know if people know this, but this is the emergency shelter for the town of Putney. So we have a generator right now that has automatic backup. So in a couple of seconds that clicks on, and we're back up to power. So we have that, we have that backup that'll take care of it.
Hello, my name is Emily Payton. I'm from Putney, and my understanding is very rudimentary. But I want to ask you why, if we are going to spend close to $1 million, why we aren't going to do so on a solar system that can provide up to 250 kilowatts. Wouldn't that be a better use of our money because it would give us more independence? I'm sorry, I was talking to them. Sorry, forgive me.
So the solar piece, it's just, we're not there technologically. We could conceivably put up enough solar panels, well, maybe we couldn't, to create enough electricity to do some sort of electrically driven heating system. But the overall cost of doing that, plus we have to have a backup, because I have solar hot water at my house. So starting in about November through the middle of January, the sun didn't come out. That's a big chunk of the heating season here. So it's just, we're not there yet. And this comes down to the most cost-effective. And I understand what you're saying. Obviously, we'd love to be burning zero carbon. But at least this way, like I said before, is we're taking carbon that is sequestered in our lifetime. We're using, a renewable resource here. And I think it's the best option.
Question here? Oh, sorry. Well, I recognized him first, so sorry.
Hi, Josh Corson. First point, especially about the solar, I'd like you to think of trees as probably one of the most efficient solar collectors. And if we can use that source locally, and the trees collect that solar energy during the summertime, within which we can use in the wintertime. My question is, what kind of boiler is it, and what kind of life expectancy can we see out of it? Thank you.
So we don't have the exact boiler spec. There's a certain amount, we've done, you know, we've done a preliminary cost estimation, but to go that much further to get the exact boiler and all that, we need the town to say yes to this before there's that much more planning. As far as the life expectancy on that, I believe we're looking at a 25-year life expectancy. You know, but like I said, until we spec whichever specific boiler we're going to use, I'm not going to know what the guarantee is on it. So I hope that answered your question.
Oh, comment, Fisher.
Craig Stead, I'm on the Energy Committee. I'm also a professional engineer and a certified energy manager. Normally for capital budgeting, you put in a 20-year life. However, let's take a look at what we are working with right now in our main boiler. It's 45 years old and still running. That doesn't say it's going to be running much longer. But the bottom line is the proper maintenance on an industrial piece of equipment. Look at your coal-fired power plants. They're 60 years old and they're still running the same boilers. So I would suggest that a 30 to 40-year life is probably very reasonable as long as you take care of your equipment. This thing totally pays for itself in 20 years and puts cash in your pocket, is what it looks like. Thank you.
Okay, this follows Craig's comments. Are some of the savings which we anticipate during the payback period going to go to replenish the capital replacement fund, and how much money remains in that fund at the moment for other things that might come up?
So right now, I believe we are looking at, and Jim Kane can speak to that exactly, although he's not here. I believe we are starting with $100,000 right now. It's between $90,000 and $100,000. We haven't been putting money into the capital plan, quite frankly, because with phase 1, phase 2, we're putting money into capital infrastructure, and we're not going to double down on that. I would hope that next year that we would then start putting money back into the capital improvement, because, you know, this it's a large building, it's going to need maintenance, and if we can, you know, the more we can knock the sort of peaks and valleys of our budget, you know, because we all need the budget, because we need to know, you know, we can't have our taxes going wildly up or wildly down. You know, we need sort of a steady known quantity of taxes, and that's part of what the capital improvement fund is for. So this year we're not putting anything in. Next year I would think that we would start putting something in, and it always depends on the budget and what comes at us. So.
Carol Weston. I really like the sound of what I'm hearing, but there's one little thing in my mind that is nagging, and that is what is the quantity of wood pellets that is going to be needed, where they're going to be stored, how many trucks, how many things delivered. I got that clarified.
So we will have a silo right outside, right pretty much in front of the kitchen area. It'll look like any farm silo. You know, I think we're talking about something that was 10 to 12 feet in diameter, maybe 18 feet high. How often, you know, depends on the winter. Winter like this, I don't know, you come once in the beginning and then you're done, because, you know, we didn't really have one. But I don't know exactly how often. Obviously, it depends on the need and how cold the winter is. But that's where the silo is. And quite frankly, I'm looking at that as a canvas for the school to do something. I think it'd be very cool. So I hope that answered your question. Yeah, so what it'll be is, yeah, absolutely. So it'll be fed with augers, so there'll be piping that will go right to the boiler and feed it right into it.
have a question here?
Can you hear me? Alice Mays here. In view of the fact that this is the emergency shelter for Putney, I would like to suggest that you consider some PV on the roof with battery backup so that in case we do have an extended outage, there would be available enough electricity to run the system, the heating system.
Okay, I mean, obviously, we have so we can go for a week on that generator right now with what the storage of the diesel that we have. As far as that goes, obviously on this phase, we can't do that. We can't do anything that we haven't already put down in our proposal here. But that could be definitely a discussion that we have with the town because, you know, once this is the emergency management shelter, I'm assuming that you guys then are nominally in charge of this. So maybe that's a discussion that we could have with the town to come up with, you know, what is an extended period of time, and, you know, what will we need to do.
Pamela?
Hi, I'm Pamela Cabbage. I just want to make a little bit of a point about solar. Anybody who, especially Daniel in the back of the room, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that makes solar most possible for businesses and residential solar right now is the tax incentives that come through the federal government and the state government. And school systems are not entities that can take those tax deductions. So my sort of long-term vision, and I think many of us have this in Putney, is that there might be the potential for a community solar investment, and maybe that could happen as a net metered system at the school in some future development scenario where we use land here, and there's benefit for the community by installing solar, but for the school system to actually invest in solar, it's really a huge outlay right now because there wouldn't be any rebates from the state or federal government. Am I wrong?
I don't know for sure. I know that they have been cutting. The schools have been. When I first started this, I thought there was going to be a lot more money that was going to be available, and I quickly found out that there's almost no money for schools, and I was very surprised at that. The federal, at the state level, it really seemed like the schools were just not on the radar. You know, at businesses, homeowners, that was available, but not for schools. We do have some parts for Efficiency Vermont. Our walk-in cooler, we're hoping for a free air system. So in other words, one of the ways that we'll be able to cool it down is just piping direct cold air with just a fan coming from the outside into the cooler. You know, school's in session for the winter. And instead of running compressors, we can run efficient fans just to cool it down. So there are things like that. There's some lighting pieces that we're hoping to capitalize on. You know, we are open and actively looking at any possibility to defray costs. You know, and to make the building more energy efficient, because in the long run that saves us all money.
Any other pressing questions?
Test a little down. My question is about the backup oil system for the pellet boiler. Okay. Why, okay, there's $900,000, a lot of money to be asking, and for the backup system to use oil. I'm just wondering if you've assessed the risks of the pellet system failing, and how much would we rely on a backup oil system if that were to happen, and if there is a somewhat more efficient alternative for a backup system?
You know, the pellet boilers now, they have been in operation for you know, a fairly decent amount of time, where they've really been able to make these things, you know, run pretty maintenance-free, you know, with very little maintenance. The reason why we need the backup, once again, is the pellet boiler is going to need a certain load. Like, it's going to need to get cold enough. So in the spring and the fall, when we just need to take the edge off of it, the oil boilers will come on. The other piece is, if by chance the pellet boiler goes down, the oil boilers would be able to heat the school. But I want to make the point again of, we are going to be heating this building with 95% of the pellet. The boiler is really a safety backup. And for the cost, it really is, the oil boiler is going to be the most cost-effective backup that we can have for it. And I don't know if I answered your question there. I feel like I just reiterated some other stuff that I said. But anyways, the oil boiler does make sense as a backup.
I think that the part that might be missing there is just the scale of the system of the pellet boiler, is that it's a very large system. And in order for it to fire and heat efficiently, it has to burn X amount of pellets and produce X amount of BTUs in a certain period of time to do that. And once that grows small enough in that swing season that Benji's talking about, the pellet boiler just can't do it, because it's like trying to have a teeny little fire in this giant machine, and it just doesn't work. So the oil boiler is the logical backup for that.
Okay.
Hi, Bill Wiedemann. I want to preface this by saying I'm in favor of it. I have the same system in my home. Pellet boiler tied into oil. I use no oil in the winter. But my question is, you got existing oil boilers. Has any consideration been given to those remaining as the backup rather than buying a new one?
The reason why they haven't is because these things are ancient. I mean, they're already past their life expectancy, and we're already having problems with them as it is. You know, these things are getting band-aided together at this point. It's long overdue for some new boilers, and you know, and frankly, a lot more efficient boilers to go with it. I know what you're saying. Believe me, if I can use something again and repurpose it, I am all for it. But in this situation, if you want to take a look at what we'd be talking about for repurposing, especially, you know, this 1970s boiler, it takes up the whole boiler room. We have to build a whole new space to keep that in place and have another. And now you're talking, your cost would go through the roof there. So it doesn't make any sense to use these old ones. We need to get rid of these there. I can't direct any traffic.
Craig's head on this. One other issue is we want all heating system integrated. And we're talking modern boilers are more efficient than what we're taking out in here. And we're integrating a sophisticated digital control system all across this entire building. It's sort of like taking a Model A and trying to turn it into something that can run down a freeway at 71 miles an hour. You don't do it. You buy yourself a new car.
Is that it for questions? I would just like to give a round of applause to Benji Craig and his Energy Commission for the incredible work they've done. Since we're taking no action, this is by Australian ballot. We'll move on to the next article. Article 4, to see if the town will accept the report of the last town meeting. You'll find that on page 54 of your town report. Tom, yeah. So moved. Moved by Tom Ehrenberg, second. Yes. And Carrie would like to correct a typo. You want to, in the town report?
Are we on the minutes?
We're on the minutes right now. I mean, sorry, yes. Minutes for 2011, page 54.
All right, I'm on page 57.
Okay.
The minutes go on quite a few pages,
They do,
actually.
yes.
I'm on page 57, the fourth paragraph, the last sentence of the fourth paragraph. We have firm the social imperative. I think it's we confirm.
Confirm?
Confirm rather in lieu
Yes.
of have firm.
Yes, okay. So, what's the right word is, Anita?
Accept the amendment.
Oh, sorry, yes. Is there a second for the amendment? Jackie Walker. Okay, so, do we have to vote on amendments to the minutes? Okay. Well, okay, friendly, wait, Ellen wants to make a, Ellen was the mover of this amendment, so let's move.
Right, I think the word is affirm.
Affirm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Tom?
Friendly amendment to the original mover accepted.
Got that? Friendly amendment to the original mover is accepted. Tom is going to be our parliamentarian here. Okay. So, if there's any other, there's no other discussion? Oh, we didn't, huh? I think Tom seconded it. No, Jackie Walker seconded it. Excuse me. Okay. Are we ready to call the question? Okay, we are voting on the amendment to the correction. What are we voting on, Tom? The original, okay. The amended minutes in the town report. All in favor? Say aye. All opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. First time I get to say that. Okay, let's move on to Article 5. To see if the town will accept the auditor's report, which you will find on page 8. And it needs to be moved.
I'll move to accept the auditor's report. Second.
Is there a second? Yes. So the article has been moved and seconded. Oh, yes, name. So Brad King moved it and it was seconded
Scott Henry.
by Scott Henry.
Scott Henry.
Okay, is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I will call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. So we will move on to Article 6. To elect trustees of the Putney Public Library. The trustees are listed on page 6 of your town report. And who's going to speak to this? Okay, Paul. Wait a second, wait for the mic.
Paul Lavasser, and I would like to present, first of all, I'd like to thank the two trustees from the Putney Public Library who will be leaving, and they are Nia Harrison and Mary Lou Treat. We'd like to thank them for their outstanding service to the Putney Public Library and the town of Putney. Let's give them. We thank Caldwell for leading us forward at Putney Public Library. We have two new trustees that we would like to present to you for your approval. They are Rebecca Nixon and Abijah Reed. Thank you.
Could you make that in the form of a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the two, or approve the two new trustees for the Putney Public Library, Rebecca Nixon and Abijah Reed.
Is there a second to that motion? Okay, Nancy Scarlett, seconds. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, call the vote. All in favor? Sorry, didn't see you. Sorry, Arthur.
Arthur Weston, point of information.
is there a requirement that the trustees be people from Putney?
Anybody want to answer that question? No, there is not. As Caldwell says, there is not such a requirement. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, we'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, Article 16 has carried. The trustees are elected. Article 7. To see if the town will vote to exempt the East Putney Community Club, which is known as Pierce's Hall, from municipal and educational taxation on the land and all improvements and appurtenances at Lot 8215, 121 East Putney Falls Road for a period of 5 years, beginning April 1st, 2012, as authorized by 32 VSA Section 3832.
So moved.
So it's been moved and seconded by Ann Carey. Josh Hoffman. And seconded by Ann Carey. Okay, is there any discussion? Anybody want to speak to this motion?
I'm Ann Carey. Abe Noe Hayes was going to be here to speak to this. I'm the secretary of the East Putney Community Club. Just want to let you know that Pierce's Hall continues to be actively used. As you know, you see the signs for the contra dances. Last Saturday of every month, we do potlucks. Our Halloween party was snowed out, but we have had private birthday parties for kids, and we continue to try to renovate the interior after we got the new roof on. So we appreciate very much this tax exemption, if passed.
Eva Munden. I know this is something that is near and dear to Marilyn Loomis's heart, and she's not back from her winter excursion. But she worked very hard with Aunt Carrie, Abe Noe Hayes, and a bunch of other people to make sure that funds were raised, bake sales, and that sort of thing to get that roof home. It's a historical building, and it's used by the community, and very much so, as the community center in Putney is tax exempt. I'd like to see Pierce's Hall also be tax exempt because it's utilized by the community. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. Passed. The article is passed. We're down to Article 8. To see if the town will vote to exempt the Wyndham Housing Trust, landowner, and Putney Cares, owner of buildings, from municipal and educational taxation on the land and all improvements and appurtenances at Lot 7418, 52 Kimball Hill, for a period of 5 years beginning April 1st, 2012, as authorized by 32 VSA Section 3832.
Brad King, so moved.
So moved by Brad King. Is there a second? Susan. Oh, well, it has to be seconded before we vote on it. Elizabeth said, okay, second. Okay, questions?
Susan Kaczynska tonight. Wyndham Housing Trust has had a name change, so I think it probably just needs to be Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust.
Would you like to make that as an amendment to
Sure,
the
I make
article?
that amendment.
Could you say that?
Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust.
So you move that the article be amended to read, the town will vote to exempt the Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust, is that correct? Okay. Is there a second to that amendment? Stuart Struckman seconded. Okay. Any discussion of that amendment? All in favor of accepting that amendment, changing the name to Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, the amendment is accepted as stated. So now, is there any other discussion on this Article 8? Okay, Okay, seeing none, I will call the vote on the amended article to see if the town will vote to exempt the Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust and Putney Cares from municipal and educational taxation on the land and all improvements and appurtenances, etc. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Article 8 is passed. Okay, Article 9. To see if the town will vote to exempt the Putney Historical Society from municipal and educational taxation on the land and all improvements and appurtenances at Lot 30, 50, 26, improvements, 15 Kimball Hill Road, former United Church of Christ, now also called Next Stage, for a period of 5 years beginning April 1st, 2012, as authorized by 32 VSA Section 3832. Who would?
Scott Henry, so moved.
Scott Henry's moved. Do we have a second? Stuart Strothman has seconded. Okay, we are open for discussion. Does anybody want? Yes, in the back. Nancy.
Nancy Olson. It was former United Church of Putney, not United Church of Christ.
Okay, so you're proposing an amendment to that?
Yes.
Article to read former United Church of Putney. Okay, is there a second for the amendment? Okay, Beth Muscat is seconding it. All in favor of accepting the amendment as of changing the name to former United Church of Putney? Say aye. All opposed? Okay, the amendment is passed as read. And any other discussion on this? Stuart.
So I'd just like to say this will be the new home of the Putney Historical Society. It already is the home of the Putney Historical Society, which is a nonprofit in the community. Also the home of Next Stage, which is a nonprofit pending federal recognition, but already a state nonprofit. So this will be our home, and while the general store is on the tax registers, this building we are asking not to be, and we hope that you'll support us. We've been fairly busy, and we hope you'll agree that we're serving the community there.
Thank you. Are there questions, comments? Tom, you're withdrawing. Okay. Seeing no other discussion, I will... Oh, sorry. Kate Dodge, back there.
I'm sure we'll discuss this later at the budget discussion, but I just wanted to call to mind that we will now have 6 Putney nonprofits. If we keep the existing budget amount for the Putney nonprofits, adding Pierce Hall, keep the original, will be $4,500 for each of them. Adding Pierce Hall and the Next Stage will reduce that to $3,000. Oh, sorry.
Are you withdrawing your comment?
I just, so that people know, the financial implication to taxpayers of this, the appraised value, the lister's value for this site is $203,100, of which the tax rate on that would be about $1.55. So we're looking roughly $3,100 in overall annual tax implication.
Eva.
Hasn't this building been off the tax roll forever? Okay, so we just leave it that way, huh?
Until last year. Excuse me, just to make it clear the way this works, though, it has been exempt completely. Now the town would make up the education tax portion of that building's tax burden. So that's the $3,200 that Josh is referring to.
Lisa Papazian, just to clarify, we are only asking for the education tax forgiveness on this property, not to be part of the listed nonprofits that receive direct assistance. That's not, we're not asking for that.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote on the amended Article 9, which is now former United Church of Putney instead of the former United Church of Christ. I'm not going to read the whole article. Are we ready? So everyone in favor of Article 9, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Article 9 is carried. Okay, moving on to Article 10. To see if the town will vote to approve the 2012 through 2013 sewer fund budget as outlined in the 2011 town report.
Josh Laughlin, so moved.
The 2000. Josh, you're moving that?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
That can be found on page 16. Let me see it. Do you want to say anything about this, or is there any questions or comment on this article? Okay, seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor of accepting Article 10, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Article 10 is approved. Article 11, to see if the town will authorize the select board acting as sewer commissioners to borrow an amount not to exceed $100,000 for improvements to the headworks and chemical feed building at the Putney wastewater system to be repaid over a period of not more than 5 years.
Brad King, so moved.
Is there a second?
Scott Henry said.
Scott Henry seconded. So is there anybody want to speak to that motion, or any questions or comments? Yes.
Josh Carson. I'm just wondering if there was someone who could speak about what those improvements are, how they fit in the long-term plan, how long have they been in function, how often is this kind of outlay going to be required? Thank you.
Chris, you want to speak to this?
Sure. Just to give you an overview of this, this is a project we've been considering for about 3 or 4 years, and it really came to a head when the Vermont safety inspectors looked at our chemical feed building and almost gave us a major fine on its poor condition. It's been recognized that it's long past the time to replace that. And the other problem we're having is the so-called headworks, which really is a filter that goes in before material reaches the plant to take out plastic and rags and things that have actually been clogging up the pumps that we put in there when we did a major upgrade of almost $3 million about 5 years ago. So this is a fairly small outlay of money that we think will be, money really well spent, because the chemical feed building is dangerous, really, over the long term, and there's also some regulations coming that will require more capacity for treating the outflow of the sewage plant. And you've probably heard about some of the Vermont state regulations that are being proposed. And of course, replacing the headworks or actually putting in really effective headworks is going to prolong the life of the pumps. And we don't think that the whole project will run much more than $150,000, and we already have some of that on hand and saved in the capital reserve of the sewer fund. So the 100,000 is just a do not exceed figure. We hope that it's going to end up being less than that.
This also represents the end result of sort of going back and forth on engineering questions for it, and it was originally recommended that we do a sort of more a larger project, and we looked at that closely and said, we want to scale this back, how can we do it? So this is sort of the minimum that we can do that really addresses the issues that we had and need to look at for the reasonable foreseeable future.
Tom.
It's just part of the fabric.
Thanks, Tom Ehrenberg. Could you, sorry, I didn't hope you had. Could you speak to the budget we just passed, which has $60,000 towards planned improvements and the relationship between that and the bill we have, the article we have considered?
Sure, the $60,000 is an amount that's already on hand to apply to this project. The $100,000 is the additional amount, the total of those two figures we feel is enough to basically cover the entire project, which may in fact be phased in over 2 years, depending on how we think the construction costs would be most efficient. I mean, it might be a little cheaper to do the chemical feed building and then tackle the other piece in another contract. So.
And as far as the line item is concerned, that is from the reserve fund, capital reserve fund for the sewer fund.
Are there any other questions, comments? Oh, there's one over there. Okay.
Hi, my name is Chris Andrus, and I'm looking at the same thing Tom was looking at, and that was the chemical feed building, and the next one is the headworks, which we're also talking about. And it says for next year, you have $75,000 put away to do that? Because you want to deal with both the headworks and the chemical feed building. Is that what we're dealing with now? Those two buildings?
Yes, you want to clarify that? You want
Yeah, I'm on page 16 of that.
Are someone going to answer that?
We're working on it.
Okay.
Right, the question being that we have the chemical feed building at approximately $60,000, and we hope that the headworks can be done for somewhere between $75,000 and $80,000. So that figure out in 2013 and 14 represents the headworks portion of this that goes forward. So that's a total, we hope a little less than 100.
Right, and that $75,000 that's listed there, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, represents the money that we would be borrowing on the order.
Correct.
That we would be borrowing.
If this article passes in order to allow us to borrow up to $100,000, that's the estimated sort of hoped for more likely number at this point.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask any more questions.
Well, does that not clear it up? The figure is to not exceed $100,000.
To fix both of those facilities.
No, the total number to fix both of them is not to exceed, we are hoping, $160,000. We're hoping if it were more like $135,000.
Okay, now you're making sense. You have 60, and you're asking for somehow to get another 100, and that should cover, more than cover, 135, that would be 160, and you're saying 135.
We're hoping it'll be 130,
yeah.
And in the 2013 budget, we're looking forward to that likely being about 75, and just putting that number on there as that expenditure. So, but that will come from the borrowed money, not from the capital, not from the sewer fund budget itself.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. You're voting on Article 11. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Article 11 is passed. Article 12, to see if the town will vote to approve the The 2012 capital plan as presented in the 2011 town report. You'll find that on page 22.
Scott Henry, so moved.
Scott Henry moved. Is there a second?
Josh Laughlin.
Josh Laughlin seconds it. Okay. So anybody want to speak to that or ask a question or make a comment? Okay,
Just if anyone doesn't, just follow the column under 2012 and 13. But most of what you're seeing there are actually payments were already committed to debt service on various pieces of equipment. And there are two new proposals in this year's, and one is a $20,000 down payment on a replacement dump truck, and the other one is $5,000 to be applied to basically upgrading the heating system in the town hall. So there's $25,000 of new spending proposed for this year.
The other thing that might not be 100% clear is just the two double asterisks that you see there at the bottom. Those are both projects, the sidewalk project, replacing the sidewalk from Town Hall down to the co-op, and Hidden Acres, which is development of a gravel pit in Dummerston. We had initially had $15,000 in each of these categories for 2012, 2013, but we're not sure, one, whether we're going to have to spend that money this year, and two, if we do, how much exactly it's going to be, and we're hopeful that those payments can be made from our capital reserve instead of coming out of being in the capital plan budgeted for this year. I'm not sure that's 100% clear, but...
I don't know. Wait, you have to be right first. Sorry. Do you want to say something? Okay. You have to raise your hand. Be record.
Oh, okay. I guess I did raise my hand.
Okay, sorry, I didn't see you.
Okay.
He was quick.
So, Dina Moses, I don't know if this is the appropriate time for this question, but the sidewalk plan, I'd like an idea about what the status of that is.
So you're asking about the sidewalk? I think is that in the capital plan? If it's not, perhaps it should be at another time. Well,
I can give you a very brief layout for it. We have received back as the engineering for it is completed. We have received back recently bids from engineers who would oversee the project, and we about 2 weeks ago sent out a request for proposal from construction companies. Right, so we will be receiving those bids back and opening them on Friday the 9th. So we're basically putting the pieces together with the hope of starting that project around April 15th to May 1st. We're waiting on bids to come back, basically.
okay, any other questions or comments?
Lisa Papazian. So I didn't understand, Josh, I'm sorry. So are you saying that because we don't know what the cost will actually be, you're putting it off until next year to plug in a number, 15 to 15?
Basically, yes. We don't know what the timing of those expenses or whether we will actually incur them in 2012, 2013. And Chris might want to elaborate further on that.
Just also a little bit is that you've already approved borrowing up to $60,000 on the sidewalk project, for instance. But because we don't know the final number, we don't know how much actually will need to be borrowed. It might be that it's going to be a little more than $60,000 that the town's cash match will be, and that would come out of the capital reserve when we know that number. But rather than inflate a number right now, that's why there's extra money going into the capital reserve, so that when that number becomes clear later in either at the end of this fiscal year or the beginning of next fiscal year in July, the board can decide to move money and sort of make a down payment on those projects and then borrow later so that those payments wouldn't fall for another year or so.
Thank you. Any other comments?
noticed, Tom Ehrenberg, I noticed that the following 2 years, you are planning a fairly substantial hit, a fairly substantial increase in the overall capital plan. It jumps from 109 in 12-13 up as high as 188. So that seems to be replacing several Mack trucks that are, I assume, aging out, in addition to the one we're talking about in the next article. If there's a way to stagger those so that it doesn't represent as big a hit in the coming years, that might be helpful.
That's a suggestion. Does anybody want to respond to
Yeah,
that?
the disadvantage of doing that, I definitely recognize your concern. The disadvantage of doing that is that, particularly with the Macs, there's a buyback program. When they get to a certain age, we're guaranteed a buyback price on them, and usually because we maintain our equipment well, that buyback actually exceeds the guaranteed price that they offer us. If we don't replace them in a timely fashion, experience has shown us that the value that we get back from them decreases pretty rapidly. It's a discussion we will be having, but I think that if the trucks continue at their current usage level, then we're likely to want to take that hit at that time as opposed to sort of having to pay more later to make up for it. The other thing that's in that budget is the sidewalk plow replacement, and that jumps things up. We're working through that one too as to what the best solution for the sidewalk plow is, and I think that these will be things that will really be coming up throughout budget discussions next year a lot, but we recognize the concern, definitely.
I would just point out one other factor that can cushion that. If you notice that at the very bottom of the capital plan, there's a $20,000 cash contribution from the Capital Reserve Fund. And because we've been building up the Capital Reserve Fund over the last several years, it could be that as those payments go up in the next 2 years, that a little more Capital Reserve money could be applied, assuming there's a decent balance in there, to keep that number more or less stable. I mean, that's the idea with the Capital Reserve Fund, is it tries to even out the highs and lows as much as possible.
Questions for you back there? In the back. Is there a mic runner here? Okay.
I had a thought. My name is Reno Novakoski. We're talking about the Mack truck right now, right?
No, we're not. We're talking about Article 12,
which is the
capital plan. It's
Capital
to approve the 2012 capital plan. The Mack truck is on the next article.
All right. We were talking about a sidewalk plow and something about sidewalks. Has the town ever considered creating a fund to hire young people to shovel? I think it'd be cheaper.
Elizabeth Stead, someone who lives on the sidewalk area. It's a great idea, however, there's a factor which a lot of people don't understand, which is when the state plows do Route 5, they do it in the middle of the night, and they quite often put a tremendous amount of salt on the highway. And when the highway plows throw the salt-laden snow on the sidewalks, it's slush. And that's probably at 3 in the morning. When any kid came out there to shovel it, it generally is a block of ice. That's why the residents, for the most part, do not shovel the sidewalks, because it solidifies in the ice. And the only thing that can get through it is something mechanical, somewhat like that machine. So it's a great idea, and regrettably, I'm not so sure it will work.
Eva. Could we have the background noise quiet? It's getting a little noisy on the edges.
I'd like to call the question.
call the question. We have, who's going to call the question? It needs to be approved by a 2/3 vote. All in favor of calling the question, say aye. Aye. All opposed? It is passed. We will call the question. This is Article 12, to see if the town will vote to approve the 2012 capital plan as presented in the 2011 town report. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The article has carried. Okay, now we're moving on to Article 13, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to borrow an amount not to exceed $125,000 for the purchase of a replacement for a 2002 Mack truck to be repaid over a period of not more than 5 years.
Josh Laughlin, so moved.
Is there a second? Brad King has seconded. Open for discussion. Comment? Okay. No. Seeing no hands raised, I will call the question. All in favor of Article 13 as read, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Article 13 is passed. Article 14, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate an amount of money necessary. Yeah, okay. Do you want, okay, before we launch into this, we're probably all getting hungry, and the smell of food that the nature volunteers, program volunteers are preparing back there is getting very enticing. We have quite a few more articles and other business which may take some discussion. I think I would like to ask the Assembly if you would like to break now and come back in 1 hour or continue on. I'm going to ask you, I think I can do this, right, Tom? All in favor of stopping the meeting at this point to have lunch and resuming in 1 hour, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. I think the ayes had it on that vote. So we're going to take a break. Okay, we're going to resume our meeting with Article 14. So if you're not sitting down, if you could please just be quiet so people can hear, that would help. Okay. Article 14. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate an amount of money necessary to defray its expenses and liabilities for the ensuing fiscal year, July 1, 2012 to June 30th, 2013. And if so, how much? Scott Henry?
Brett King.
Brett, sorry.
I move Article 14 in the amount of $1,738,357.
Is there a second?
That is Scott Henry, second.
Scott Henry, second. You will find the budget on page 21, I believe, in your town report. So
That's the end of the budget line.
End of the budget, right. So that's a big amount of money. Is there any questions, comments, discussions about this large amount of money we're going to be asked to raise?
If I might interrupt you, I don't know if you've had a chance to see the budget summary, which is a helpful one-page tool that will give you an idea of where any changes or increases have taken place.
I'll give you a few minutes to peruse the budget. So has everybody had a chance to look over the budget? The $1,738,000 budget? Are there any questions? Yes, Pamela Covich. Baxter, do you want to go? She's got a second.
Hi, Pamela Covich. This is a really anecdotal question, but how do you reduce healthcare expenses?
There were some major changes at the state level with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, who are insured. They no longer offered a group sort of umbrella policy, which they used to do, so we went out with a private broker, still using Vermont League of Cities and Towns as a consulting service. But we got a plan with virtually no increase, and we also switched to a different type of kind of a co-insurance. We were sponsoring health savings accounts. Now we've changed to health reimbursement accounts, which still offer employees some coverage for high deductibles, but if the money isn't spent, it stays with the town rather than being individual money belonging to the employees. So it was, the coverage remained the same basically, but it was advantageous to the town.
Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, Kate Dodd, Jody back there.
Kate Dodd. I'd like to make my annual motion to increase the budget for the nonprofit donations by $1,000.
So you are amending the article to increase the contributions to nonprofit organizations by $1,000?
Yes. Overall.
Tom, is that okay as stated? He's our expert here. We need a second for that motion. Jean Giddings is seconding it. Is there any discussion of the amendment proposal to increase by $1,000 our contribution to nonprofit organizations?
Okay, if it's not otherwise specified, then it would just be distributed as it's already, proportionally as it's already distributed.
Any comment, any questions? All right, then we will vote on the amendment to increase by $1,000 the town contribution to nonprofit organizations. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. All opposed? Sounds like the ayes have it. All right, so we have an amended article with a $1,000 increase. Does anybody wish to say or speak or add anything else to this budget article? Tom Ehrenberg.
Following on the great examples set by the town of Keene, it occurs to me that we probably are underfunded in our municipal safety, and I'm wondering whether you consider buying a tank to go up and down the streets of Putney, and whether you want to include such an expenditure in the town budget. The town of Keene, I don't know that we want to be outdone. They merely have an armored car, and you know, I imagine there's some federal funding that Keene seems to have gotten some pretty good federal funding for this.
Tom, we got a better deal on a box of RPGs.
Friendly suggestion, Tom, I imagine. Eva.
You know, I think that's a good idea to have one, but I believe in private enterprise, and I'd like to see Tom Ehrenberg buy it, and then we rent it from him when necessary. What say you all? What say you all?
Okay, that's just a suggestion also, a friendly suggestion. Anybody else have any other excellent suggestions for our select board? Or comments on this article? Okay, seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor of voting, of raising an appropriate, to raise and appropriate an amount of money necessary to defray its expenses and liabilities in the ensuing fiscal year, and to increase by $1,000 the contributions to nonprofit organizations, which will increase the bottom line of this, actually. So the amount will be $739,357. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. Okay, great. Nay. I must have. The article has passed. We just passed a $1,739,000 budget. Okay. Article 15. This is a difficult article because it is a table meant to be looked at, not read. But I will have to read it to you. So here we go. To see if the town will vote to clarify the terms and conditions of individual funds administered by the town as follows. I'll read it across. Fund name, Capital Reserve Fund. The source of funding, town meeting appropriations. Fund use, projects and equipment on approved capital plan. Spending authorization, direct voter approval or select board approval for public works as allowed by Vermont statute. Then the second category down here is fund name is Public Safety Reimbursement Fund. The source of funding will be fire service, ordinance billings, and nonprofit gifts. The fund use will be fire station debt service, balances in excess of debt service for approved public safety expenses, and spending authorization will be direct voter approval or select board approval for public safety expenses. Do I hear say?
Scott Henry, so moved.
So moved.
Yes, as stated.
As said, and seconded.
Josh Lockman, second.
Josh Lockman, second. Okay. Anybody who would like clarification or explanation or information about this? Someone back there? Yes,
Jackie Walker. When it says nonprofit gifts, and they have to go to approve public safety expenses, does that mean that they have to? Or can they go to other things?
This probably primarily has to do with the gifts that we receive from the private schools that are directly funded the building of the firehouse, the agreements that we reach with those.
Wait, Jackie, wait for the microphone.
If they do something every year, does this tie you up to doing it only for the fire?
It was with the amounts agreed upon for a donation to the fire department fund from these institutions, from the schools.
Is there some way to make clear that the nonprofit gifts from other groups can go to anything you want it to go to? Like the Wilson Wetland or something like that? Or do they all go to the fire department? Not that I don't think the fire department needs it, but...
Right, these were specific...
Well, I would say that the gifts that are referred to here are very specific gifts that were basically pledged to support the debt service on the fire station originally. They weren't for something like the Wilson Wetlands, which is another specific project. This doesn't say that every time someone creates a purpose that they're collecting funds for, that somehow has to be funneled to this fund. This.
Jackie, we can't hear you.
Let's just say that right now, the fire station debt service exceeds the amount of gifts that have been pledged from the various schools to cover.
I see.
So that money needs to be reserved to pay a portion of that debt. The remaining amount of that debt gets paid from the service reimbursement account, ordinance, which collects money from accidents that the fire department responds to. And that money generates a small surplus every year at this point, which has been spent for other public safety related expenses.
Okay.
So right now, the board, for instance, they've built up enough of a surplus in that fund to purchase the ladder truck replacement for about $22,000 last year. So right now, there's a little bit of money being generated beyond what's needed to pay the fire station debt service every year. In the future, as that debt service is reduced, because that's a declining payment, then there may be more money available in the future for other uses, and maybe the town will come back and vote something else. But the purpose of this article is to clarify to the people who are making decisions what they can spend the money on and how they do that. And that was recommended to us by the auditor, that we have very clear direction for how this money can be used, so that when in transitions, when new people come on board, they understand how that money can be spent.
I understand that. I think this is very audible, and we should do that. But I just want to clarify that it's not all nonprofit gifts that come in, that go to that.
That's true.
Maybe should go to something else too.
Yes. So maybe, Jackie, you could ask to amend it to read ordinance billings and designated nonprofit gifts.
Okay.
Something along those lines.
So we have an amendment to add designated under the source of funding for public safety reimbursement, ordinance billings and designated nonprofit gifts. Do you have a second for that amendment? Steve seconds it. All in favor? Any discussion about that amendment? Proposal? All in favor accepting that amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, the amendment is passed.
We're changing in the column that says source of funding in the public safety reimbursement fund, the fire service ordinance billings and designated nonprofit gifts.
Designated for the okay, Lisa, okay. So, any other comments or questions? Oh, okay, Arthur Weston over there.
First of all, one very little thing. I like Jackie's amendment as it passed, but could we, as a friendly change, make it as and so designated?
Jackie, are you willing to accept that friendly amendment? Yes. Anything from Arthur, she says. Okay. Whoa.
Wait till you hear the next one.
Okay. So,
now I have a question, which is I find rather curious. In the spending authority authorization, it gives two possibilities: either voter approval or select board approval. But who makes that decision, or is that already predetermined?
Well, I can tell you that right now, the voters are approving an amount in the budget. If you look at the budget on the revenue page,
what page is that?
That's page 17. And under police and fire reimbursement, school donations, $65,000. $65,000 is being appropriated by town meeting to pay the fire station debt. So whatever is left at the end of the year after that debt is paid, if there's a balance in that fund of perhaps $14,000, which I think if I were to give you a figure today, that's what would be left. The select board, without coming back to town meeting, if they have an expense for radios or something related to the public safety aspect of things in town, they can spend that money by vote at a board meeting.
Okay, is that satisfactory? Tom, Aaron.
John Erdman, if I understand the gist of this, it is removing authority for spending from the town meeting and placing that authority directly with the select board. With a lot of due respect to the select board, and I mean that sincerely, but sometimes we have other select boards, and as a point of historical principle in Vermont, the town meeting has always approved expenditures, and I understand that it is allowed by Vermont statute, at least that's what it says in the article. But I think if that's correct, am I correct in that is the thrust of the article?
Well, I would say no, not exactly. I mean, it's two things. It's clarifying what is allowed under Vermont statute, which is for projects that have already been approved on the capital plan. The select board has the authority to spend money from the capital reserve fund to actually fund those things. In fact, the select board has the authority to actually borrow money to replace equipment during the year if something gets broken without coming back for a vote. Only for equipment under public works, so roads, sidewalks, equipment, things like that. So that there really is, this is clarifying that that's the case. I don't know if you could override that authority by a town meeting vote, say we don't want the selectmen to have that authority because they have it. And we're not asking to change anything in that. I think the second one, for the fire, the public safety reimbursement fund, there is a little bit of leeway that you're giving to the select board to spend money beyond the necessary money to pay the fire station debt service. I mean, there is a small amount of money that is in there that they have been able to spend for, as I said, this ladder truck that came up suddenly that was a replacement for one that was really was going to cost much too much to repair. So that could have come back to a town meeting for a vote, but this allows something like that to happen again, or to purchase new radios, or to do whatever came up that seemed appropriate at the board level. And I guess there is no specific limit on how much they could spend, and maybe you might place a limit on what could be spent without returning to the town for a vote. But in general, this does give some latitude to the board to spend a fairly small amount of money. I mean, these are not, at this point, there's no, unless this fire station, the fire reimbursement fund generates tremendous amounts of money, there's no way that this will build up to any large sum, at least not within the next year or two.
Do you envision this as being an annual article, or is this a one-time approval?
This would be a one-time approval. I mean, until circumstances change. For instance, if the debt service starts to, in 5 years, starts to drop dramatically, and it no longer, for instance, if you reached a spot where you didn't need anything more than the school gifts to cover the debt service, so that all of that reimbursement ordinance money was available, then maybe you would say, well, it's generating $25,000 a year, and it's going to build up unless we have.
I don't doubt for a moment the wisdom of the select board and how they spend that money. That's not my issue. My issue is that there's a reason why we go through this process every year and approve a budget. And I believe that all money coming into the town should appear in the budget and be voted on by the town at town meeting. I think that's an important civic exercise, and that has nothing to do with whether or not I have total confidence in the select board and the decisions that they're making. In general, I think money that we spend, and certainly there are monies that we both raise and monies that we appropriate that don't appear in the budget, but they tend to be very small and in these little special funds in various places. But basically, I think money that the town takes in and that the select board proposes to spend should appear in the budget and should be voted on by town meeting. So, unless the wording of the article is different, I'm going to speak against passage of the article as it's currently presented.
Any other, Lisa?
Lisa Bavazian. Tom, I think, I'm not sure, but I sort of recall that when I was on the select board, the revenue portion of the town report is, I don't believe it's by statute that it has to be presented, other than the tax appropriated portion of the revenues from other sources are presented here for explanation. And the select board does, and I believe, and I could be wrong, I believe they have the latitude to use whatever other sources they can generate and come in to defray tax appropriated funds. So, and I just wanted to clarify that this line item that you're speaking of, the second line fund, is only non-tax raised revenues. The ordinance and the gifts, both of which I'm not sure if the ordinance is when it was when that law was passed in the town, or ordinance was passed, whether it restricted the uses of those funds at that time. So this would further restrict those funds. So right now, this serves to restrict those funds only to defray public safety. They couldn't go out and buy, you know, I don't know, a new fancy front door for the town hall, for example. So it would restrict those funds more than they are now, for example. And I don't know what I'm saying. I just wanted to make that clarification.
That is accurate. Although it's also, I would say that the way we present the budget in Putney, the revenues, there are two ways to present revenues. Either you can present them in this form, which shows the overall use of revenue on the first page of the budget, or you can do it by individual article and vote to take X number of dollars from the capital reserve fund and to take X number of dollars from the fire department. Instead, we show it as an overall combined document, but the numbers are here and anyone can ask a question about how to use them. It doesn't change the fact that there still is a little bit of latitude built in this article to allow some discretion to a board to spend some amount of money on public safety equipment during the year.
Eva.
After hearing Tom and then Lisa and Chris, I think I really feel strong about leaving sleeping dogs alone. And I feel that if it's true what Lisa said, you're nodding your head, then things are copacetic for me. I'm pleased with it. So I'd like to call the question.
Okay, Eva has called the question. All in favor of calling the question? You need a 2/3 vote. All in favor of calling the question on this article, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. We will be ready. We will vote. Article 15, as read, with the change of the source of funding on the second box down, meaning fire service, ordinance buildings, and so designated nonprofit gifts. All in favor of Article 15 as amended, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Article 15 is passed. Okay, here we come. Article 16. We are now in, this is warned, but I don't think it's a non-binding article. So, we can discuss it and amend it and vote on it, but it is non-binding. Whereas the people of the town of Putney understand that indefinite detention without charges or access to an attorney is illegal and signifies abandonment of basic constitutional values, we, the people of Putney, abhor and reject this breach of law. Anyone? I think Emily Payton wants to speak to this. She proposed this. We have to, sorry, it has to be moved. Who would like to move Emily? We need someone to move the article. Greeno, okay. Greeno, Nokowski, who's seconded by Arthur Westman.
Thank you. I'm Emily Payton. And I brought this onto the town board. I know there's discussions going on whether national issues should be voted on in town meeting. And I think it is annoying to suggest that we don't have a say in our national issues. We are part of the nation and we need to speak up where things are going really awry. And I consider the passage of the NDAA, where there is a premise for anybody, American citizens or not, to be picked up and held without charges, even in Guantanamo Bay. Now, the UK has a way that they can hold people without charging them, but they limit it to 3 weeks. But here in the US, they're seeking to make a legal regime to do it indefinitely. And the duplicity of the Obama administration to suggest that they did not support this aspect was spoken to by Senator Carl Levin, who, when they originally talked about the bill, that language was not in it. But the administration asked us to remove the language which says that U.S. citizens and lawful residents would not be subject to this section. And it's concerning, so that's why I brought this to the town meeting, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, is there any further discussion or questions about this article? Arthur Weston.
Arthur Westing. I'm, first of all, very strongly in favor of this article. I think it's something that we all should feel very strongly about. I'm not suggesting this as an amendment, but I would say that the word values is rather correct but weak. In fact, this violates constitutional articles, not just values, but the actual wording of the U.S. Constitution. But I would like to make the following amendment. And I don't mind making this, it's going to be Josh who has to worry about it. I would like to add to the end of this amendment, and I might also mention I will make exactly the same amendment for the next article. But I would like to add is, moreover, we instruct the town select board to inform the president, as well as our 2 senators and 1 representative in the Congress, of this action.
Is there a second for that amendment? Christopher Urian seconds it. The end of that was of this amendment, of this article. Right. Did you get that down, Anita? You said that often faster. What I got was, moreover, we instruct the town select board to inform the president, as well as our 2 senators and 1 representative in the Congress, of this action. Is there any other discussion about this? Okay, seeing none, we will vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment to this article, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? So the amendment has carried and will be added to Article 16. Is there any discussion about the amended article? Okay, we will move on to a vote of Article 16 as amended, as I just read it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, Article 16 has carried, and our select board is charged with informing the appropriate people. Okay, Article 17. This is another non-binding resolution. Correct? Yeah. Whereas within the borders of the town of Putney, Vermont, the people of Putney declare that corporations are not people and shall not now or ever enjoy the rights of personhood. Do I have a motion for that article? Mike moves. The second. Tiffin Mabry seconds. Okay, Emily, would you like to speak to this also as the mover? Oh no, the mover actually. What, the presenter of the... Anyway, who wants to speak about this? Anybody? Mike.
I want to thank Baxter, first of all, for getting his exercise. Baxter's almost as tall as me now, isn't he? Oh, I want to thank everybody that's been doing this running here today. Thanks. I think Arthur has a germane amendment to this that I'd like to hear, but I'd also like to share that town meetings across Vermont today are talking about this. And one of the reasons is we want to put this on the national map again, the way historically Vermont has put issues ranging from nuclear freeze to how we look at healthcare and nuclear energy or different kinds of energy. We do have a voice here that'll be heard beyond Putney, beyond Vermont. And if we add our voice to all the other town meetings that stands up for individuals and stands up against what I feel is the injustice that the Supreme Court decision, People United, is rendered, giving more power to corporations and then rendering individuals less powerful. We have an opportunity here today. Many legislators, like myself in Vermont, have been asked to carry the message to our towns and then bring it back to the legislature and then from there to our elected representatives in Washington. So I stand and ask that people would support this and collectively make our voices known.
Okay, thank you. Someone anyone? Oh, sorry.
Again, I can say exactly what I said earlier. I'm very strongly in favor of this, and I thank Mike for that passionate support as well, and Emily Payton for starting it off. I'd like to make exactly the same amendment as I did a few moments ago for the prior article, and I'll read it once more. Moreover, we instruct the town select board to inform the president as well as our 2 senators and 1 representative in the Congress of this action.
So we have a proposed amendment to Article 16. Do I have a second for the amendment? Laura Campbell. Any discussion of this, or should we, Jackie?
I'm very much in favor of this.
Well, I don't think we can hear you, Jackie. Still not working for some reason.
That's fine. I am in favor of this article, but I'm concerned that it doesn't mention a constitutional amendment in it, because if somebody says, okay, we want to do a constitutional convention, that's a whole other kettle of fish. And because of a convention, anything can go. And an amendment is specific for this.
Are you suggesting an amendment or an additional amendment? How do we do that? Steve Anderson, can you give him
Steve Anderson, Emily and I haven't worked this out very well together, but I had something else, but maybe I could work this into her proposal. It would include in the directions to Congress the following words: to propose an amendment to the U.S. Constitution which affirms that money is not speech and which places strict limits on the use of corporate funds in state and national elections. And the reason I have included the word personhood for corporations in that, in my suggestion here, is that I'm not sure that we are able, at this state of our economy and our society, to say that corporations are not persons. A lot of our economic and legal structure rests on that proposition. So what I said instead is that Congress found a way to place strict limits on the use of corporate funds in state and national elections. So if you're concerned that that's out of the amendment, that's the reason.
Is this significant change of the original article, Tom?
I can give you a copy of this.
No, the safety set. All right. Yes, please do give me a copy. So is this an amendment? So what we do? We have two amendments. Okay. Well, I just want to clarify this point of order. Okay.
Is it your judgment that Steve's proposition is a significant change in meaning from the original article?
Yes. Yes, it is. Then he, okay, but, so I think we have to vote on the first amendment. We haven't done that yet, have we? Okay, and Emily, so let's do that first, and then Emily will give you a chance to
We
speak.
could also treat these as two separate articles, and Steve could bring up the full wording of his again, which I would support.
Under other business?
Yes.
Okay, that sounds like a very good suggestion. So let's act on let's act on the amendment for Article 17, which has been moved and seconded, which reads as he read it. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, so that Arthur Westing's amendment to Article 17 has passed. And Steve, are you okay? We'll bring up your point under other business. Okay. So, does anybody want to? Yes, Kate. Okay, I just recognize Kate. Well, Kate's getting microphone. Maybe Meg could speak. Meg Mott.
Hi, I'm Meg Mott, and while I appreciate the spirit of this bill, okay, like this. Sorry, I don't want to create feedback. But while I appreciate the spirit, the way it's currently worded, I would not want to support it. That's for a couple of reasons. One of which I think Steve is referring to. I am not, first of all, I'm not convinced that the word corporation in and of itself is problematic. Nor do I think the word person is necessarily innocent. If you look at the constitutional law, corporations have had this recognition of rights under the Constitution since 1886. So this is a big shift. It's not just Citizens United. This goes back to Santa Clara County. Sorry, I teach political theory, and I really could go on for a long time. So one reason that I think this is problematic is this is deeply ingrained in our legal and economic and political structure, and so I wouldn't support this. The other thing is that just as corporations are not necessarily horrible and persons are not necessarily wonderful, I'm much more interested in holding corporations. This is something that Don Kreese from Vermont Law School, maybe you all heard him last month on VPR, suggests, why don't we treat corporations more as constitutional actors, in which case we should use the death penalty to put out corporations that we think are not following the law. So I think we can be far more creative than this particular proposal suggests, because I don't think persons are as innocent, and the reason for that is, if you look at the Constitution where we see persons is 3/5 persons. Persons has been used in terms of slavery arguments, and persons as a concept is used in fetal arguments. So it's not a innocent category, just as corporations is not necessarily an evil category.
Okay, Jeanette, would you like to speak next?
Thanks. Hi, I just got back. I've been all over the county. But, and I missed lunch, so I'm eating a hard-boiled egg here. But we've been taking a lot of testimony. My committee is the one that deals with this issue because we deal with issues of democracy, as I said. This is actually a very complicated issue, and there are two, I believe, distinct issues here. One is, do we want corporations to be able to spend large amounts of money to influence elections? The second question is the issue of personhood, and they're two entirely different issues, and I think that was just pointed out. And you know, the passing this can show a sentiment that we think there's something wrong, and maybe corporations are getting too much power, are influencing elections too much. But it is a very complicated issue, and I'm not encouraging you to vote for or against this, but I'm just saying that in the end, what will come out from the state anyway might be very different, and it might be actually two separate resolutions, one dealing with the rights of corporations and how they should be protected or not protected, and the other one is the issue of how corporations not even spend money in elections, but whether they're accountable and report them and stand by if somebody is responsible for their ads. So I just wanted to point out that it is a very complex issue.
Emily, did you have your hand up? Yes. Okay, can you give the microphone to Emily?
Hi, there's a couple of other people I think are ahead of me, but I did want to speak to the fact that that corporations have begun to be seen as people from a long time ago, in the 1800s, according to some legislation around the railroads. That being said, there's a lot of things that went down 100 years ago, the Federal Reserve Act, the IRS Act, that were nonetheless very, I consider, acts of treason against the people. And it doesn't mean that we should let them slide because they've been going so long. I just wanted to say that.
And Carrie, since the microphone is right here, I just want to second what you just said. I don't think we need to know about the complexities and the intricacies and the long-term history. I think that we can go ahead as residents of Putney and vote our sediment, right? This is the water lady speaking about flood control. Our sentiments that we do not believe corporations are people, and they do not, the Bill of Rights wasn't written for them. I don't want them running around thinking they have a right to bear arms. And I think we can go ahead and vote this in good conscience without knowing all the intricacies, and other folks can figure that out.
Okay, Ellen, please.
I'm Ellen Kay. I was wondering, I generally support this, and I generally agree with what was just said, that as a town, we're expressing a sentiment which is part of a larger movement in this country of coming to an awareness about this issue. So I think it can only help. We're not lawyers collectively in this room, and I don't think it needs to be so very specific, but I'm wondering about one small change that might help. The last word is personhood here, and I wonder if we can say natural persons, because there is an amendment in Congress different from what Bernie Sanders is offering that just changes that language. I think it's from Keith Ellison. It changes the language from person to natural person, because the corporation can't be considered a natural person. So I wonder if that might just clarify what we're saying here. So I offer that as an amendment.
Is this a friendly amendment? Is that okay, Tom? The mover has accepted, and the seconder have to accept that. Who was the mover? Mike. Did you move this? Do you accept that friendly amendment of changing personhood to natural person? And the seconder, who was that? Who seconded it? Oh, Tiffin, no, Tiffin did. Tiffin maybe did. Okay, do you accept that, Tiffin, that friendly amendment? Yes, okay. So, yes. Christopher Urian.
I didn't quite understand. Is it that a natural person is someone like me and a corporation is the opposite? Because I think you said...
No, a corporation is a collection of persons. So it's
Wait, yeah.
Yeah, a natural person is someone who was born, as opposed to a corporation, which is a collection of individuals under a name, which is a different entity altogether.
Now you have to wait for everybody else. Laura Campbell.
I have to put my glasses on to see what I'm talking about. Point of clarification. Are we going to say in the possible amendment, shall not now or ever enjoy the rights of natural persons to match corporations? Or are we going to say, shall not now or ever enjoy the rights of a natural person? I mean, if we're going to put some change in, I think we should know which it is.
Could you clarify that?
I don't know. A natural person?
Just choose. Just a natural person.
An unnatural person.
A natural
Not
person.
unnatural person.
Enjoy the rights of unnatural person. Kate Guy.
I realize this is a non-binding article, but the way it's worded is a little confusing, and I'd just like to, I guess, get some clarification. It says, whereas within the borders of the town of Putney, the people of Putney declare that corporations are not people. Does that mean it refers to Putney corporations? And are we suggesting an ordinance that declares that Putney corporations aren't people? I'm just wondering if it shouldn't just cross out within the borders of the town of Putney, so it's a little more general. So I guess I would make that a move for that amendment, that we eliminate within the borders of the town of Putney those words.
So it would now read, whereas the people of Vermont, people of Putney, Vermont, declare.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's correct.
That's an amendment to this article. Is there a second for that, Abijah? So we'll vote on that. Any comments? Let's vote on the suggested amendment to Article 17 to remove within the borders of the town of Putney, Vermont. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, well, that amendment has passed. So now reads, whereas the people of Putney declare that corporations are not people and shall not now or ever enjoy the rights of a natural person. Maggie Cassidy?
Like many people here, I have been horrified to see the effect of the millions and tens of millions of dollars that have already gone into political campaigns from corporations and super PACs particularly. The super PACs adding a second layer of anonymity to people, to people and corporations who wish to influence our electoral process. I have trouble with this article because it seems to say we in Putney declare that this Supreme Court decision doesn't apply to us. And for us to declare that corporations are not people seems to me a little bit tilting at windmills. And I would prefer that we use our collective political power to direct our legislators to look for ways to make individuals and corporations at least accountable for their contributions to political campaigns and to super PACs. So in that spirit, I will be voting against this and will be looking for a different article for this body to pass. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other first hearing on the front here?
In answer to that, if we go back to Article 16 and the wording where we say, "We the people abhor and reject this breach of law," and add that as an amendment.
Sorry, that article has been voted on.
No. I'm just suggesting we use the same language.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So you were just. Yeah. Yeah, we could maybe start all over again and do better. Where's?
Well, it would actually be very simple to just add the line, "We the people of Putney abhor and reject this breach of law," as an amendment.
As a whole, I think that is significantly altering.
Okay.
I don't know. I feel like this is getting too confusing, and that we need to stop changing it and vote on it as it is. And if people don't like it, then they can vote against it. That's my opinion. Okay.
Yeah, hi.
More question.
I'm Steve Fitch. I would like to support what Maggie just said. Just listening to the discussion, this is a complex issue. And I defer to Jeanette on this, and I think it's kind of, inappropriate for us to take such a complex issue and think we can come up with a simplistic resolution that makes, that will be impactful. I like the idea of limiting the funds on elections. I think it would be far more useful for this body to vote on something like that and send that message than a very vague resolution that, quite frankly, if it were passed and you polled 50 people here, you'd get 50 different interpretations of what they just voted for. So I would vote against this.
Eva. Sorry, Val, did you have your hand up for a long time?
I would prefer to Mount River.
Thank you. I know people have said they don't want to go into the history of this, but the 14th Amendment has been used at least since the late 19th century, pretty regularly used to defend corporations and their people under that amendment. It was originally after the 13th Amendment was passed freeing slaves. The 14th was passed to try to protect the rights of newly enfranchised citizens, but it's been used much more to defend the rights, the personhood of corporations, even though it doesn't say anything about that. But I mean, they've managed to use it in that way. So that's all. Just a little historical note.
Okay. Eva?
I'm just very Tiffany.
I call for the question. Okay, we've had a call to question. All in favor of calling the question? We need a 2/3 vote to pass that. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, the question is called. That means we will now vote on Article 17, which now reads, Whereas the people of Putney declare that corporations are not people and shall not now or ever enjoy the rights of a natural person. Of Putney, Vermont, excuse me. Whereas the people of Putney, Vermont declare that corporations are not people and shall not now or ever enjoy the rights of a natural person. All in favor, please say aye. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, I forgot your amendment. Okay. Oh, addenda, just what I read, and then, moreover, we instruct the town select board to inform the president as well as our 2 senators and 1 representative in the Congress of this action. Okay, so that gets added on to the end of what I read previously. Is that everything, I think? Okay, so we're ready to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. Okay, I am going to divide the House on this issue because I couldn't tell who won that vote. Sorry, Leader. So if you would please raise your hand to vote, and somebody's ready. Who are our counters for this? The select board will be our counters, and we will record this as a count vote. Okay, all in favor, please, of passing this Article 17, with all those things that we read, please raise your hand. And so, hold them up till we tell you not to. Don't raise two hands. Robert says.
I had 16.
47 in favor.
47. All opposed, please raise your hands. Okay, 47 to 39, the ayes have it. The article is passed as a non-binding resolution. Okay, then we'll move on to Article 18, to transact any other town business that may legally come before the annual town meeting. Steve Anderson.
Well, I know it's getting late and I don't want to prolong this, but I think I have an article which will answer some of the concerns that have just been expressed. And I've read part of it already. In light of the United States Supreme Court's Citizens United decision that equates money with speech and gives corporations rights constitutionally intended for natural persons, the citizens of Putney, Vermont, vote to urge the Vermont General Assembly and the U.S. Congress to propose an amendment to the U.S. Constitution which affirms that money is not speech and which places strict limits on the use of corporate funds in state and national elections.
Is there a second to this? Laura Campbell. Okay. Moved and seconded. Before discussion. No discussion. It is getting late. Oh, Tom Ehrenberg has something to say.
Amendment, I'd like to say, strict limits on corporate and personal funds. And personal funds.
Well, that's always a question.
So, is, Tom, you're making an amendment to add and get corporation equipment.
The Koch brothers notwithstanding, I would like
Use of
to...
corporate and personal funds, is that at the end?
Strict limits on
the use of corporate and personal funds in state and national elections?
Yep.
Okay, is there a second to that amendment? Maggie Cassidy seconds it. We have to vote. Is there any comment, or can we vote right away on that amendment? Arthur, do you want to comment on that?
Town, not just state.
Well, I think that was sort of a friendly suggestion. Do we have to? Okay, I'm going to pass that one over, all right? Is there any other comment before we vote on this amendment to this article?
I think Arthur just volunteered to represent the town in this matter. So.
Okay, all in favor of adding "and personal" between corporate and funds in this article, please say yes. Oh, aye, or whatever. Aye. Okay. All opposed? Okay, your amendment has passed, Tom. So we're still then now discussing the amended Article which is 18, other business. Any other comments? Yeah, Ted Dodd?
Transact any other town business.
Right. Todd, can you put it right close to your mouth so we can hear you? Yeah.
Transact. Ted Dodd. To transact any other town business. These previous articles, 16 and 17, have been properly warned, I think, for this meeting. But is what Steve recommends really germane to the business of the town?
Yes. They're non-binding, so I think that they can be considered without being warned, because they are non-binding. Is that correct? So Anita says yes, we can, because it's non-binding. Okay, and Harry? Oh, sorry. Dan, you had to have it in your hand. Go ahead.
Dan Foster. I'm kind of confused. Are we in the middle of a discussion about what was read?
We're in the middle of discussion of Article 18 as amended.
No, this is not Article 8.
Well, yes it is, because that's transacting any other town business. So we're in the middle of transacting other town business, if you should call this a town business, which we decided
Other
to call.
town business? Okay. Oh, we have an article on the floor, so then I will wait.
On the floor, so that's
That was
what
my
we're
question.
discussing.
Should I wait? Yes, I should wait.
Yes, the proposal that Steve Anderson made as other business. And Carrie, would like to speak to it over there.
This is just a point of information. The previous Article 17 as voted stands, even though we voted this one.
Yes, it would. It has been voted and passed on, and cannot be reconsidered because we moved on from it. Emily?
I don't agree that this is an article. I think that this is a resolution, but it's not Article 18.
Okay, it's other business, you call it.
Yes, it's a resolution, Steve Anderson's resolution to be adopted would be the proper terminology, but we're not voting on it as a town article.
Steve Anderson's resolution. Okay, I think that's a good suggestion. Yes, Emily.
And along with that, I'm hoping that everybody will have the patience to stay, because I have a couple of more that I'd like everybody to. I'm going to be real quick, and they're very easy and supportive. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll just say that it's getting really late and people are getting tired, so. Okay, so all in favor. Are we ready to vote on this Steve Anderson resolution? Okay. All in favor of Steve Anderson's resolution as amended, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Steve Anderson's non-binding resolution is passed. Is there any other town business? Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, Dan Foster.
My name is Dan Foster. I'm on the Putney Recreation Commission. And the Putney Recreation Commission runs the Putney Rec League. I just joined that board a few weeks ago, and this is my first assignment in how those boards work. So I got an email 6 weeks ago that said the board really needed more members. There's been a core group of members running it, and a few recently needed to move on. The Putney Rec League runs the K through 6 sports programs in the fall, in the winter, and in the spring, and they run sports clinics. And most everyone has seen the kids playing in the fall and in the spring in the field out here. It's a very important program. The Putney Rec League also is involved with a bunch of other activities, helping with the snack shack, helping to fundraise and build that. The pavilion is 25 feet by 40 feet by the pool. They help build that. And the reason I'm bringing this up is to let everyone know what the mission of the Putney Recreation Commission is. The commission was started in the 60s, I believe. And its mission is to provide recreational opportunities for all Putney residents in programs that encourage participation, skill, development, fun, and good sportsmanship. And it was started around the time when television first started to get a foothold on the time and attention of kids. And I think it was developed to sort of counteract the effect of that. And now with all the latest electronic screens that we have, I think we really need to really boost what we have going, more firmly establish the programs we do have, the K through 6, but also hopefully expand what we offer. When I was growing up, there were a lot more paths around people's houses and between houses from the kids riding their bikes so much and just playing outside all the time. You really don't see that quite as much. So anything we can do to help kids get outside and get more exercise, I think is a great idea. And we've done a lot to deal with kids' diets and getting soda machines out of the schools. But a lot of studies show that exercise, if you have to have either the best diet or the best exercise program, the best exercise program wins every time. So I'm encouraging anyone who has time and or money or fundraising abilities that can help with the Putney Recreation Commission or the Putney Rec League in any way to please see me. I have a clipboard if anyone wants to sign up and can help in any way. And that our next board meeting is next week, Wednesday the 14th at 6:30 in the writing room down the hall. Thank you.
Hi, Janet Goldstein, and I was wondering if Mike could speak to the problem with the internet. I had emailed you about the people who live on Windmill Hill and how we have a very little options open to us, very few options, and you were going to a meeting with somebody from the state, and so I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Excuse me, Janet, I'm just going to interrupt because we're running late, and he did speak to that this morning.
Oh, he did, so I
if you
missed
have
it.
questions, why don't you go speak to him personally?
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. It is running late. Jackie?
I'd like to propose that we have a non-binding vote. That whereas the people of the town of Putney appreciate the importance of a vibrant downtown, we extend our gratitude to the proprietors of the Front Porch Cafe for their many contributions to the community and express the hope that their shoes will soon be filled by someone equally committed to the spirit of the town.
Is there a second to that resolution? Jim Biddings, no discussion, we can go right to the vote. All in favor of Jackie Walker's resolution, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Jackie's resolution has carried. And if you would like to hand maybe what you wrote to Anita, unless if you haven't already, so she can get them to the town meeting, of course that would be helpful. Eva, I think you
a non-binding resolution to support the work of Bob Nassau, who leads a bike ride up and down the state for the Boys and Girls Club, and also this year for the first time, Kurt Wagenbach, who's a neighbor of mine, who is a state police, he's a state police state trooper, and he'll be riding his bike part of the way down to the Washington, D.C., where the fallen police memorial is. So I'd like to honor the two of them and let this be a non-binding resolution to support them.
Is there a second for that non-binding resolution? Then we will just continue on and say I guess Fred and Kyle. All in favor of that non-binding resolution? Aye. All opposed? Okay. This non-binding resolution has passed. Okay, Emily Payton?
This is a non-binding resolution, and it is, whereas the people of Putney, Vermont express their unified support for Vermont's elected government to continue their work on Vermont's movement towards systematic monetary improvements to benefit, the economic stability of Vermont. Therefore, we, the people of Putney, Vermont, express our full support of H. 542, a bill in the Vermont House to study the feasibility of a Vermont public bank, as well as our support of H. 361, an act relating to Vermont dollars, which seeks to create a statewide currency. S. 204, an act relating to creating an expert panel on the creation of a state bank, and Senate 247, an act relating to establishing the Vermont Green Trust. May I speak?
No, excuse me, is there a second for that resolution? That second thing means you put it on the table for discussion. If there is no second, it means we pass over it.
I did not second it.
Oh, I thought you seconded. Oh, okay. Somebody seconded?
Alice May.
Alice May seconded. Okay, so it is on the table for discussion.
Okay.
Yes.
So I just want to say this is really good work that they're doing, and I just really would like to see the town support them and help them move it forward, and want everybody to be aware that they have been working on these issues so that we can be much more economically stable as a state.
Okay, anybody else want to speak to that? Yes, in the back there. Steve Fitch, right?
With all due respect, I know this is an important issue. I haven't read those bills. I don't know what's in them. What I do know is that we have a $3.5 million school budget to vote on, and we're running short on time. So I would hope that we could dispatch with this fairly quickly and move on to the matter of our school budget, which is close to home. Thank you.
In the spirit of that, I will forego my second resolution. Just rest on this one, okay?
Thank you. We still need then a vote. I think you're calling to question. It sounds like we need a vote on the second, on this resolution on the table, on the floor, actually. Any other? Okay. All in favor of the resolution as read by Emily Payton, say aye. All opposed? No. I'm going to call the nays have it, and we will continue on. Any other business to come before the town portion of this meeting? Okay, good. Then we'll move on. So, okay, we're going to ask the select board to step down. Select board, yeah. Select women, select men, aren't those? Select people to step down, and the school board to take the stage. I'm going to thank the select people for the fine work they have done this year in managing our town. If there's no objection at this time, I'm also going to invite Ron Staley, WSESU superintendent, and Jim Kane, who is the business administrator from WSESU, to join the table. Any objection to that? They are not Putney residents, but they are part of the team. Reno, I don't think you can be heard. Do you want to have a mic? Okay, just a quick announcement.
Consider filling out Bill Boyle, senator or legislator from Alabama County, and the school town forest surveys. Take them home to mail in, but don't go home without them.
2 surveys, Bill Doyle's survey and the Putney Town Forest survey. Please fill them out before you leave. Okay, I'd like to have the school board introduce themselves. Starting with Melanie Fletcher. Hi, I'm Melanie Fletcher.
Zoe Parker. Ann Fine.
Benji Cragen.
Mark Schlepper.
I don't think Mark can hear you.
Mark Schlepper.
Okay, and then we have...
Yep, I'm Herb Pelletier, principal of Putney Central. Ron Staley, superintendent of schools.
Jim Kane, business manager.
Okay, so you want to...
I want to make a long-winded speech that I've been working on. And this will not be long. I do want to point out our administration. They do a fantastic job. We are very well served. We're very lucky to have the competence and the expertise that we have over here. The ones in the suits, if you didn't know. I just want to really briefly just go over a couple things. Most of you, I don't think, get into the school that much, just to let you know. Obviously, I talked earlier about our energy project, and phase 2 is complete, what you've been seeing, all the activity all summer long. It has really increased the insulation and energy efficiency of that building, and quite frankly, the comfort in those rooms for a learning environment is big. The other big change has been our pre-kindergarten program has been, it's a huge success. We've created a wonderful space for our pre-K kids to start their experience at Putney Central School. There was a number of people involved in making this happen, but without the leadership and the energy and the drive of Ann Fines, this would not have happened. It was really... Another quick piece I just want to speak to is, you know, over the past several years, I'm sure you've noticed that we've been eliminating classrooms as our student population has dwindled, and I have had people say, well, you know, what's the viability of this school in the long run? And I'm pleased to report that it looks like we've seen the bottom of that trend. We seem to be leveling out now in our student population, which is a good thing. If we thought that this trend was going to continue on and on and on, we would have thought twice about making the improvements that we made in the building. But we feel very strongly that this school and this size school is going to be necessary for our kids. And I wanted to let Ann speak briefly to the endowment fund, which is a very important piece here.
The Endowment Board, which is in its third year, would like to thank all of those who have contributed to the fund this past year. This year, for the first time, several community members contributed on their own initiative, not as a result of a specific solicitation, for which the board was deeply appreciative. This year, we also sent out a fundraising letter to Putney Central School alumni, from which we received over $1,000 in donations. I think this suggests the depth of feeling that Putney Central School graduates feel toward this school and their experiences here. The board has now reached and surpassed its initial goal of raising $10,000. The fund has over $11,000 on hand. This includes money in the general fund as well as restricted gifts made toward another set of grants which will be given out this May. Last May, the Endowment Board gave out 3 different grants. The first one was for uniforms for the boys and girls basketball teams. The second grant went for an adult student knitting class led by Arlene Scott, a master knitter who's also the school nurse. So this meant that adults and students were learning how to knit together as a group. The third grant went to Bob Birch and Nancy Gagnon for glass blowing lessons for 8 middle school students. And I had the opportunity to sit in on some of those lessons, and it was a really great opportunity for the kids. So, thank you for your support. If you're interested in learning more about the fund, there's a table right over there with information as well as note cards for sale that have artwork by the Putney Central School students. And there's a table there which has products of both the glass blowing and the knitting groups, so you can see what the students actually produced. So stop by, take a look, and thank all of you very much.
I think we're ready to move on to Article 19, to determine what salaries the Putney Town School District will pay its officers and directors. Who's going to move that article? Ann, okay.
I move the Putney Town School District be authorized to issue vouchers for the payments of its officers and directors for the ensuing fiscal year in the amount of $800 each.
Is there a second for that? Mary Ritchie, second. Okay, are we ready for any discussion of that article as read? Article 19. Okay, seeing no discussion, are we ready to vote? All those in favor of giving Putney Town School District officers and directors $800, I didn't read that quite the way she said, vouchers? Okay. Yes. And all in favor of Article 19, say aye. Aye. All opposed? So Article 19 is passed. Article 20, to see if the Putney Town School District will authorize its school board to accept and expend categorical grants and aid received from the state of Vermont from the United States government.
I move that the town school district authorize its school board to accept and expend categorical grants and aid received from the state of Vermont and the United States government.
Or the United States government. And. Okay. You have and, but I'm going to change my. I haven't good. Second for that motion by Zoe Parker. Laura Campbell, second. Any discussion? Arthur Weston.
I'm curious to learn why it doesn't also say, and grant from other sources or private sources, words to that effect.
You know what, that's one, I pride myself in answering most of these questions, but I'm going to pass that on to Jim Kane, or maybe Ron Staley.
It's on.
I don't have the exact answer. All I can say is that next year's town meeting warning will be done with more detail relating to other and private grants.
We do know that the school board has to accept other grants, and in some cases it comes through the supervisory union. We have private funders for our asset development and social competency work. So it's usually coming through the broader supervisory union for them to accept, but that has to be received by a board.
Arthur, Tom had his hand up first.
The short answer is that
it's a historical piece. The short answer is that many grants that come from the feds or the state require this authorization in order for the grant to be dispersed.
So it's always written this way?
Sorry? It's every year it's written this way, just so.
The last piece minutes, it does include private sources. Arthur, speak again.
Arthur Westing, I'd like to make an amendment, and that is to add or other sources, public and private.
Is there a second to that amendment? Elizabeth Christie seconds it. Other sources, public and private. Laura, do you want to speak to it?
Laura Campbell. I understood from what these gentlemen were saying that we only need to pass this article in order to receive the money from the federal and state governments. I gleaned from that private and other sources of money were attractive and would be acceptable to the school without needing authorization. True or false?
I believe that that's true. That being said, why not add the language? You know, just in case, we'll take all money and we want it in writing here. So you know, maybe someone will read that and go, oh, I thought I couldn't give any money, but now I know I can.
Okay, so I think we're ready to vote on this amendment to Article 20 to add another sources, public and private. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, the ayes have, the amendment is carried. Is there any further discussion about this article? And we will move to vote on it as written with the addition of the amendment from the state of Vermont and the United States government or other sources, public and private. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, Article 20 is passed as amended. Article 21, to see if the Putney Town School District pursuant to 24 VSA 2804 will deposit a portion of the unreserved and undesignated fund balance for the year ended June 30th, 2011, to be deposited into the district's education reserve fund in the amount of $12,614 for the purpose of operating the school. 24 VSA 2804. I think you'll find that on page 40. Does anybody was moved? Oh, it has to be moved. Okay. Who wants to move that?
I'll move it as you said. I moved as...
Oh, I moved as read. I'm sorry. Right. You're going to read again. Thank you. Okay. And, Jackie Walker will second it.
So, can I speak
yes,
to it?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. What this basically is in trying to be as transparent as we can be, we set this fund up, I don't know if you remember last year, basically to codify how we deal with any surplus. So on this piece, all it is the surplus that we have is getting put into this account. And so all the rest of the surplus just gets applied to taxes. So for argument's sake, if we had $1 million tax burden and we had $200,000 left over, we would just apply that to the $1 million, so it'd take the $200,000 off. So once again, the point of this is to clarify accounting practices, and that's basically the gist of it.
Any other comments, questions? All right. Are you ready to vote? All those in favor of Article 21 as read, please say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Article 21 is passed. We'll move on to Article 22. To determine whether the Putney Town School District will vote to raise and appropriate an amount of money necessary to defray its expenses and liabilities for the ensuing fiscal year, July 1st, 2012 through June 30th, 2013. And if so, in what amount?
Okay. I move that the Putney Town School District authorize its Board of School Directors to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,466,333.00 necessary to defray its expenses and liabilities for the ensuing year 2012 to 2013.
Is there a second? Frank McCallum. Okay.
Can I?
Yes.
So, I'm sure, why don't we start off by going to page 41, because you'll notice that what it says there at the combined total is $3,504,133, not what I just said. The reason for that is, if you go 1, 2, 3 lines up above it, under the long-term debt energy project, there's $37,800. That is subtracted from the total because everyone is voting on that for the bond. So if the bond doesn't pass, then this is how much we will have for our budget. If the bond does pass, that will add the $37,800. So that's the reason why you're voting on a different number. Then I'd just like to talk about this budget because I'm sure there's some of you who have gone through there and there's been some sort of large swings in some categories. Probably starting off with some of the largest swings, if you go to page 40, to page 45, you'll notice under special education, paraprofessional salaries, it's the second line under the special education. You'll see a large deduction in that. Basically what that is the designation of what can be special ed and what can't be. The bottom line is we haven't changed our staffing. What we basically are doing are sort of putting people in different categories than they were before, which makes it, I'm on page 46. Oh, I'm sorry. My bad, page 46.
bottom of 46.
Bottom of 46, second line under special education. So you'll notice that $54,611. If you look, then if you go to page 45, you'll see an increase in paraprofessional salaries. And there's also some, the apportioning of the paraprofessionals. This is why some of these categories, the salary structure has changed as much as they have. Whereas our staff, our raising that we have is 2%. You'll see larger than 2% increases on there. And basically it's the reshuffling of the staff which makes it confusing this time. So I also wanted another sort of big movement. If you go back to page 47, this is about tuition, which is underneath the special education. It's about 8 or 9 lines down. There's been a big reduction in there. That basically means that children that are getting special services in tuition WSESU programs has dropped significantly, obviously. So that is another one of the big movers in this budget. We can stay on that page. I'm sort of highlighting the sort of big changes to try and explain what's happening. I'm sure when people go through the budget, a lot of times people sort of fixate on the sort of large swings. So if you stay on page 47 and go down to early essential education, you'll see that has a large increase. Those are our, is it 3 and 4-year-olds? 3 and 4-year-olds that are getting services through the Triple E, and that is just based on services and how many kids need it in Putney. So there's an increase for next year. Let's see. There's another piece that I thought was important to look at is the preschool, and that is page 43. Okay, it's in the middle, preschool. And if you just look at the total, because the preschool is new, we hadn't had all the numbers in there from last year. You'll notice that in the you'll notice that there were 70,000. That actually we had a $30,000 grant, so that number would have actually been $100,000. Because remember, when we put on our budget, whether we have offsetting revenue or not, we still have to have that in our budget, so that even though it would be $100,000, we were getting $30,000 from the grant. So if you look, you see that large change, the $99,000. We have revenue, we're going to have $15,000 that's going to offset that from the same grant. And that grant we will be able to apply for year after year. And the grantor has been very happy with our program and has given us every inclination that they will continue to grant and help defray our pre-K program. So I thought that was important. I'm sure people have other questions. I just wanted to sort of hit on the big pieces.
So are there any questions about this budget? Everybody still have some energy. Meg Cassidy in the back.
I would like to applaud the school board and the community for supporting the preschool. It's a point of pride, I think, that we support our youngest learners, our most vulnerable learners, so that they have the very best possible chance of coming to kindergarten ready to learn. And I'm really proud of that.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
there's one other piece that I wanted to add. On everybody's chair, there's a tax implication on there that is new. I had mine, now I had the page on there. The bottom line is they've changed the state tax rate from 89 cents to 88 cents. So the point being is the tax implication for this budget is 11 1/1000ths of 1% increase. So bottom line is there's basically zero tax increase in this budget. That's the important thing that you take away from that.
Kate Dodge, who's back there?
Kate Dodge, I just wanted to clarify or maybe notice, I think it's a typo on the entire school budget. The first column is the 2010-2011 budget. I'm sorry, 42 and 43. The second column is 2010 to 2011 actual. I think the third one should read 2011 to 2012 budget. And the fourth one is the proposed is 2012-2013, which is what we're voting on today. Is that correct? Yes.
Anybody want to speak to that? Comment about that? Is that
That is correct. Yes, that third column should be 2011 to 2012 throughout the school budget.
So the typo in the budget will be corrected, but I believe it changes the bottom line figures that we're considering right now. Thank you. Jeanette.
Thanks. I just wanted to point out that Benji said that this was based on that we changed it to 88 cents. That's an estimate only. Be careful about that. We're not done yet.
Okay. False promises from the heart.
What is adequate curiosity? What's the chances of having the tax rate ready by the time town meeting comes so that people will be able to vote on it? Can you do something about that, please?
Jeanette?
No. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Questions? All right, seeing none, I will ask you to vote to determine whether the Putney Town School District will vote to raise and appropriate the amount of money, et cetera, being $3,466,333. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it, the budget is passed. Okay, Tom. Yes.
I want to make a very quick comment of thank you to the board and the administration, the district administration, as well as her for support of the preschool program. I'm getting to be one of the old people, and I can remember town meetings in Putney when the kindergarten was first proposed that were extremely rancorous and where there was very, very bitter, long, year after year after year arguments about whether or not the town should support a kindergarten. And it was only under threat of a lawsuit that it eventually did. So we have come a long way, and I really appreciate the recognition of the importance of early education and of elementary education generally. So that's off to all of you. Thank you.
Excuse me, can you get the mic? Can you turn around and get the microphone in the back?
Just to Nancy Olson, just to comment on Tom's comment, I was looking through town reports sometime back for the
the 250th as an anniversary celebration, centennial celebration. And when the kindergarten program did pass, it passed by 1 vote.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on to Article 23, to determine whether the Putney Town School District will authorize the school board to borrow money in anticipation of taxes.
I move that the Putney Town School District authorize its Board of School Directors to borrow money in anticipation of taxes.
Moved by Melanie Fletcher. Is there a second? Tom Howe. Is there any discussion, questions? And we will vote. All those in favor of Article 23, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Article 24, to transact any other school business that may legally come before the annual school district meeting. Okay.
I'll move it. I'll
Well,
move. I do have some business.
You have business, so you may speak to your
May I
business.
speak?
Benji.
It is a very sad day today. It is a very sad day. Anne Fines, after 13 years on the board, is retiring. This is her last day as the board member. And she is going to be so missed. As I said at the last board meeting that we had, Anne has taught me what it means to be a good board member. And what that is being able to listen, being able to help and shoulder your load. And the other thing that I think most important is courage. And courage to stand up when maybe the other people in the room disagree with you, and stand up and speak passionately and respectfully about what you believe in. And I know that the board will move on, we'll get new members, but she'll still be missed. We owe a debt of gratitude for everything that she's done for us, and I will miss her very, very much.